The Lord of the Depths, a Game of Thrones tale. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76, The Central Lake of Seeking Island. The 50 canonized young knights all had their own separate tents, and their treatment was provided in accordance with that of real knights. In Abdu's tent, Stavn lit a candle, and the darkness was immediately dispelled by the flames. Stavn sat on the bed, tilting his head to look at Abdu, who was doing push-ups. His fair cheeks revealed a softness under the firelight. If it weren't for the obvious Adam's apple, anyone who saw Stavn for the first time would not have thought that he was a man. Stavn held his chin with one hand and said softly, "According to my calculations, Prime Minister Jack's strength should be 3 to 4 of you, which means that he can blow your head off with one punch. Humph, even if he is born with supernatural power, he will be injured by alcohol and sex sooner or later, and I will catch up with him sooner or later," Abdu said, unconvinced. Hearing this, Stavn immediately became interested. He first went out and looked around, and came to Abdu, after making sure that there was no one. Abdu looked at Stavn blankly. "What are you doing? Plotting a rebellion? What rebellion? Let me tell you, you know the Blackbird I formed, right? Of course you know. Didn't you invest all the money you earned in it?" Blackbird was the intelligence agency formed by Stavn to prevent his brother from killing him. It was small in scale, and was used specifically to monitor Dora Hizaka. I arranged a few blackbirds to serve as servants in the Prime Minister's tower. According to them, the Prime Minister is really greedy for money, but his lust is fake. His usual food and drink expenses are about the same as those of ordinary nobles. Besides, it is said that the Prime Minister likes painting very much. He always draws some messy things on paper, and he is mysterious and doesn't let others see it. Abdu raised his eyebrows and suddenly said meanly, "Maybe the Prime Minister is planning a rebellion and then imprison His Majesty to give birth to children for himself, and also occupy His Majesty's 3 dragons to give birth to children for his own dragons." Stavn smiled lightly. "Be careful that there are rears on the other side of the wall. If the Prime Minister hears it, he will directly confiscate your family and exterminate your clan." Although he was joking, Stavn was also reminding Abdu that, if Jack really heard it, he would definitely lose a layer of skin. The two joked and discussed their next plans. They were both the second sons of the family. Especially for the second son like Stavn, who didn't get along with the eldest son, setting up a new family was almost the only principle. No matter where in the world of Game of Thrones, the eldest son inheritance system is the absolute system for stabilizing the family. Even in the next 30 years of Atlantis, Jack is also planning to continue to use the primogeniture and feudal system. After the education system is improved, it will enter the feudal society through reform. When Jack is old, Atlantis will enter the capitalist society or something else, which is not something Jack can control. Seeking Island. Crack-Hoo. Newgate was furious. Crack-Hoo was startled by Newgate's voice and stood up suddenly from the cowshed. Newgate pointed at the skeletons of the 2 cows and was so angry that he couldn't even speak. The beard on his lips trembled, and there was an inexplicable sense of humor. However, after Crack-Hoo found out that the person coming was Newgate, he yawned disdainfully and directly swept the cow skeleton with his tail and then soared into the sky. The officials around Newgate also looked miserable. He was originally one of the senior slaves. He was arranged to be a manager here, and he thought it was a high-paying and easy job. I didn't expect that Karakshu would come to collect money from time to time and eat more than a dozen cows. Who can take responsibility for this? Sir, why don't you write a letter to His Majesty the Seeking? No one can control it here. The oxen are always eaten and can't work at all. Alas, Newgate sighed. I know. I will write to His Majesty the Seeking and ask him to come back and take Karakshu away. Excuse me, sir, I will prepare the ravens. In order to facilitate the delivery of letters, Newgate purchased 10 ravens. This kind of ravens with a little magic color in the Game of Thrones is expensive, but it is very convenient to deliver information. Back to his residence, Newgate took out the letter and first reported on the current development of the Seeking Island. The manufacturing process of fine salt and soap is already familiar, and the next step is to choose a location to build a factory. Newgate suggested to build a factory on Crescent Island in the northeast, because according to the planning of the Seeking Island, the factory cannot be built in the Seeking City. At the same time, thousands of acres of fertile land were reclaimed around the central lake, and a group of people were added every 2 months. The construction of the city and the reclamation of the land were proceeding in an orderly manner. After writing about the development of Atlantis, Newgate took a deep breath, took out a new piece of paper, and began to denounce the crimes of Karakshu. From eating only wild animals on the island at the beginning, to stealing livestock and poultry, to eating openly in the end. After sealing the letter, Newgate sent it to Slava Bay through a raven. Looking at the disappearing back of the raven, Newgate murmured, "Your Majesty, come back quickly, and take Karakshu away. It is simply a stumbling block on the development of Neptune Island." At this time, there are more than 20,000 people on Neptune Island. When the next batch of people arrives at the beginning of next month, Neptune Island will have 30,000 people. According to Jack's plan, Neptune Island needs at least 100,000 people to reproduce, and then introduce external population according to the situation. Lord Newgate, are you there? Suddenly, a servant's voice came from outside. Newgate looked in the direction of the voice, and saw that the person who came was Ingvar Tran, who was in charge of digging the canal. "What's wrong?" Newgate looked at Ingvar, who was sweating profusely. "Why are you so panicked? Someone is dead. Someone is dead." Newgate's face changed. The laws of Atlantis were compiled by Jack himself, so the issues involving human life were very serious. What happened? How did they die? How many people died? Newgate poured a glass of water and handed it to Ingvar, signaling him to speak slowly and not to rush. "Since you asked me to be in charge of digging the canal, I found something wrong. The fish in the lake are too small. This means that there are large beasts in the lake, but I didn't care until just now. When the number 7 canal was opened, 2 workers were dragged down by something on the shore. Atlantis had just been established, and Jack attached great importance to the shaping of culture and faith. The slaves who came to the Seeking Island have adapted to the life and cultural customs of Atlantis customized by Jack. They firmly believe that every life is a blessing from the sea god, so they must never let down their own lives and the lives of others. Because of this, Ingvar was full of regret at the moment, and 2 lives were lost because of his carelessness. Seeing Ingvar's regretful face, Newgate still comforted him, and then asked Ingvar to take him to the scene of the incident. Chapter 77 The Tip of the Iceberg. Ingvar led the way with a face full of self-blame, and said at the same time, "It's all my fault. I found something wrong when I first observed the Sky Lake, but I didn't expect that the thing in the lake could actually drag people into the water. There are nearly 10 lakes and rivers of various sizes on the Seeking Island. The largest river almost spans the entire Seeking Island, and the center of the river is like an eye. Therefore, it is also called the Central Lake, the Central River, or the Sky Lake. Because when Ingvar was in Slave Bay, he was responsible for digging canals and irrigating the land for the slave owners' estates. So Newgate asked him to be in charge of this matter and gave him 300 people. Now it's 298. At that time, Ingvar found something very wrong when he was observing the terrain. It stands to reason that the Sky Lake is so big, there should be a lot of animals drinking water around it. But the animals on the island would rather go to some small streams to compete for water resources than drink water in the Sky Lake. This shows that there is something terrible in the water. But at that time, Ingvar's idea was, is there anything more terrible than humans? So he didn't pay much attention to this matter. It was not until 2 workers were attacked this morning that he realized the seriousness of the matter. Perhaps the things in the water are much larger and more aggressive than he imagined. Soon Newgate came to the number 7 canal. According to the plan, there will be no private farmland on Neptune Island. All farmland belongs to the royal family, and then the royal family will hire people to cultivate the farmland. The first state-owned grain production base is set to have 490,000 mu, or 326 square kilometers of land. After that, canals will be dug along Cheyenne Lake to divert 49 branch streams to irrigate the land. The accident happened in the recently dug number 7 tributary, which had an accident when the water was finally passed. At this time, the scene of the incident had been circled by the law enforcement team, and the surrounding crowd was full of melon-eating people. This kind of thing can't be concealed on Neptune Island at all. Melons spread much faster than government orders. The crowd consciously made way for Newgate. He came to the front. There was no trace of anything useful at the scene. Only a broken hand was left. Newgate looked at it for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. But the crowd around him all looked at the oldest man on the island expectantly, hoping that Newgate could give a definite answer. Newgate's face was not very good. It would be strange if he could see what happened with just one hand. Although he was the oldest on the island, his knowledge might not be as good as some of the previous senior slaves. At the critical moment, he suddenly remembered that there were some contents about the origin of Atlantis culture in the book My World written by Jack. So Newgate immediately showed a little fear and said loudly, "This is a water monster. Look at this broken hand." It is obvious that when the water monster swallowed this poor manhole, he instinctively reached out for help, but in the end only a broken hand was left. Newgate's words only made people believe 3 points, but his exaggerated expressions and body movements made people believe 7 points. Although there were true gods in the Game of Thrones before the runaway system harvested the gods, most people in the world are still atheists. Especially in the continent of Essos, most nobles only believe in the money in their hands, not the ethereal and illusory gods. Especially in the era of magic exhaustion before the appearance of the red comet and the dragon. Otherwise the wizards of Karth would not be called charlatans. At that time in Karth, Zero and the wizards were ridiculed as Navo-Rishan charlatans. Most people are not interested in things like water monsters in old grandmother's stories, but now that the facts are in front of them, Newgate made everyone believe his words. But then someone asked Newgate how to solve it. Newgate blinked his eyes, and then said, I have to go back and study it to see if His Majesty the Sea King left any way to deal with it when he left. Although Newgate's ability is average, he is absolutely loyal to Jack. On the island of the Sea King, many people have never seen the so-called His Majesty the Sea King. But Newgate would praise Jack whenever he had the chance, which led to the people on the island being very curious and respectful of Jack. When the people who were eating melons heard Newgate say this, they all prayed that the Sea King left a way to deal with it. Newgate quickly promised that, even if the Sea King did not leave a countermeasure, he would invite the Sea King back to preside over the situation. After a while, the crowd felt bored and left one after another. Newgate hurried back to his room and took out the My World. After scanning the catalog, he finally found his goal under the title of Culture, Sacrificial Culture. If he remembered correctly, he should have seen the content of sacrificing water monsters in the sacrificial culture section. However, after Newgate read it carefully, he shook his head in disappointment, because he found that the only function of sacrificing water monsters was to stabilize people's hearts, and the premise was that there were no water monsters in the river. But there are really water monsters in Cheyenne Lake, and they even ate 2 people just now. And Newgate believes that after the water monster eats people this time, it will definitely continue to look for targets. Thinking of this, Newgate quickly issued an order to suspend the excavation of the tributaries of the canal. In addition to the necessary drinking water, try to reduce the number of times to the river. After thinking about it, Newgate couldn't think of any good solution. He could only write another letter to Jack and beg Jack to come back quickly. At this time, Karaku fell from the sky by the Cheyenne Lake. He had just captured 5 monkeys. After a full meal, he was going to drink some water and go back to rest. However, just after drinking 2 sips, a dark shadow suddenly appeared under the water. Karaku reacted very quickly and immediately leaned back to distance himself. In the blink of an eye, the water surface suddenly exploded. A monster that looked like a lizard broke through the water surface, opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth and bit the air. Of course, if Karaku hadn't reacted quickly, this bite would definitely hurt him. Even the slender neck might be bitten directly into 2 sections. When the monster fell heavily to the ground, Karaku could see the monster clearly. The whole thing looked like a big lizard, with teeth turned outward, as if it had no lips, and a pair of huge fins behind its head. Its forelimbs are like those of a duck, with thin membranes between its 5 toes, and its hind limbs are completely transformed into long webbed feet like oars. It is 6 meters long, twice as long as Karaku. but the monster doesn't seem to be good at moving on land, and after failing to strike, it prepared to retreat into the water. Karakshu looked ferocious. As a famous cruel dragon in Game of Thrones, Karakshu would never let the monster go so easily. Chapter 78 The Bearded Thief. When the monster turned around, Karakshu rushed forward and bit the monster's tail. Karakshu tried to stop the monster from returning to the water, but the monster's strength was far greater than Karakshu's. The monster swung its tail violently, and Karakshu was thrown out. The moment it flew out, Karakshu made a judgment in an instant, and the hot dragon flame spewed out, and the monster's back was burning in an instant. Then the monster screamed miserably and plunged into the water. Karakshu seemed to realize that the monster was afraid of fire and immediately spewed a few more mouthfuls of dragon flames toward the water surface and then let out a provocative roar. After a few minutes, there was no movement on the water surface, and Karakshu left with satisfaction. No one saw the battle between the monsters, and Karakshu couldn't speak, so naturally he couldn't tell Newgate and others what the monster looked like. The next day, the main hall of the True Dragon Pyramid. Dany held her chin, pursed her lips, and looked at the two people quarreling below. Barristan, you old man, what right do you have to call me a bloodsucker? Words are not enough, old thing. You are old, and you only have a mouth left. You said I was greedy for money. If you have the guts, take out the account book. Let's confront each other face to face. Jack looked aggrieved and angry, as if Barristan really framed an honest official. Barristan looked at Jack with a wronged face, and his white beard trembled with anger. Shameless, Jack Poseidon, you simply don't have the honor and responsibility of a noble. Jack is not only the Prime Minister of Meereen, but also named the Duke of Slavers Bay by Daenerys, and a large area of land around Meereen was granted to him. However, most of the land around Meereen is salt land, and there is not much land that can be cultivated normally. When Jack was named the Duke, he almost laughed out of emotion. If Jack was in Dany's position, he would definitely make himself an earl and leave room for promotion. But Dany is a good person. In order to keep Jack working for her, she directly awarded him the Duke. Jack's face remained unchanged after hearing this. Barristan, you dare to say that I have no honor and responsibility? You were a member of the Kingsguard of the previous Targaryen king. The king was killed by the Kingslayer, but you actually joined the usurper and became his Kingsguard. The son of the usurper was driven out of the Kingsguard and finally came to Meereen to beg for mercy. Old thief, you are a slave of 3 surnames, and you dare to bark in front of me? Since you didn't dare to be loyal to the previous king, why did you linger on and be a dog with a broken back? Barristan's face turned red. When it comes to scolding, how can he compare with Jack, who has a wide range of experience? It's just that Jack doesn't have a 4-wheeled vehicle now, otherwise he would definitely scold him to the point of vomiting blood. Seeing Barristan's face flushed, Jack Poseidon was not relenting, and took advantage of the victory to pursue. What do you want me to do? Am I wrong? You Barristan are paid by the king. The previous king appointed you as the glorious Kingsguard, gave you wealth and glory, but you, after the previous king died, you joined the usurper's army. You are unworthy of being a knight, worse than a beast. Jack became more and more excited as he scolded, and continued to jump and scold. 2 ministers and thieves, we are not in the same conspiracy. Although I, Jack, am just a lowly pirate, I also know that loyalty should be the first priority for a minister. My loyalty to your majesty is witnessed by the sun and the moon. Unlike some people who are born in the noble families of the 7 kingdoms, but are 3 surnamed slaves, shameless. After Jack finished speaking, he waved his hand and turned around without looking at Barristan, as if looking at him any more would pollute his eyes. This turnaround directly gave Jack a perfect spiritual victory. But for Barristan, it was simply the last straw that broke the camel's back. Arsehole, you've gone too far. I'm going to apply for a trial by combat and let the 7 gods bear witness to your lies. Barristan drew out his sword and was about to duel with Jack. Enough. Dany stopped Barristan with a gloomy face. Aren't you too ashamed? The Prime Minister has already said that the money saved will be used to make up for the food. Don't mention this matter again. Sir Barristan is not a traitor or a traitor. He is the bravest, most glorious, and most powerful knight in the 7 kingdoms. He had no choice but to join the usurper. In addition, I don't want to hear anyone mocking Sir Beristan as a traitor in the future. Otherwise I will let Grey Worm cut off his tongue. The farce ended with Dana's stop. In the end, Beristan just glared at Jack angrily. He originally thought that, even if there would be no substantial punishment for accusing Jack of corruption, Dany would give him a verbal warning. In the end, Jack was not punished or accused, but he got himself into trouble. Fortunately, Her Majesty the Queen was reasonable. She not only believed him and explained for him, but also forbade others to laugh at him. In fact, Beristan was indeed one of the top knights in the Seven Kingdoms, as Dany said. If he had not taken the initiative to accuse Jack of corruption in the court, Jack would still admire him. Even if Daenerys was counted, he had served 4 kings, and Jack would not call him a slave. Dany glanced at Jack and immediately collided with Jack's innocent eyes. Dany glared at Jack fiercely. Beristan was so old. If you made him angry, who would train me to lead the knights to fight? In fact, Jack could also help Dany train qualified soldiers and generals. Jack knew how to train discipline and remembered how to use the 36 stratagems. Although it was all on paper, as long as the soldiers were trained and fought 2 more battles, they would definitely be familiar with the use of the 36 stratagems. But Jack would not teach Daenerys these. The background of the Ice and Fire world was similar to the Middle Ages in Western Europe. The 2 sides usually rely on phalanxes and cavalry charges in war. The 2 sides confront each other on the battlefield, and then they set up their positions and charge each other directly. The victory of the war depends entirely on the difference in numbers, equipment, and morale. When Robb Stark went south, he relied on feints to the east and lured the snake out of its hole to directly annihilate 8,000 people of Jaime Lannister, and even captured Jaime alive. If Robb Stark had not broken off his marriage and killed his confidants, he would not necessarily lose the war, even if he became king. Even if he could not make the North and the Riverlands independent, he could at least defend the Bay of Kaelin and make the North independent. But it is a pity that the 15-year-old young Wolf Lord is a genius in military affairs, but his political mind is inherited from his father. What's more, Robb Stark was only 15 years old at the time, and it is not difficult to understand his pursuit of beautiful love. Chapter 79 Return to Atlantis. A week passed. Even with Daenerys' warning, Beristan's titles such as 3 surname slave, white-haired old thief, and traitorous thief still spread. After all, the 2 were important ministers under the Queen, and it was natural that they could not hide such a big melon as quarreling in court. But Jack was much smarter than Beristan, and he directly spent hundreds of silver coins to control the direction of public opinion. So now most people believe that it was Beristan, or 3 surname slave, who was jealous of Prime Minister Jack's talent. Then he framed the Prime Minister for corruption without any shame, and was scolded by the Prime Minister on the spot to vomit blood. This made everyone understand Jack's methods again, which were really insidious. It is said that Sir Beristan has not shown up for several days. Everyone speculated whether he was scolded by Jack and could only live in bed. When the direction of public opinion was controlled by Jack, Jack became idle again. The garden at the top of the Prime Minister's tower. Jack was lying in a rocking chair, surrounded by 4 maids, 2 of whom massaged him. 1 peeled grapes for him, and 1 reached out to catch the grape seeds he spit out. "Sir, there is a letter for you." Ivan came over and handed Jack a letter. Jack did not reach out to take it, but asked first, "Whose letter is it?" "I don't know. There is no signature, only an upright lizard pattern." Jack waved his hand to disperse the maid beside him, and then took the envelope from Ivan's hand. Sure enough, there was a picture of Godzilla roaring to the sky on it, which was a message from Atlantis. The Atlantis Raven will first go to the Chamber of Commerce office at the Marine dock, and then the dock people will put the message in the envelope, and finally send it to the Prime Minister's pyramid. Although there is an extra procedure, it also conceals Jack's relationship with Atlantis. Now the whole of Essos is in a state of watching the show. Except for Bravos, most city-states have cut off trade with Meereen. Unless Meereen can defeat the slave owner coalition this time, other waiting forces will not trade with Meereen. At this time, if they find out that the father of the dragon is actually an Atlantean, then they will no longer allow Atlantis to harvest their wealth with products. Instead, they will unite and form a coalition again. After defeating Atlantis, they will take the production technology for themselves and then harvest the wealth of the world. Jack will never underestimate the greed of these slave owners. After Ivan left, Jack lay on the chair and read the letters. There were 3 letters in the envelope. The first one was Newgate's brief description of the development of Atlantis. Jack nodded with satisfaction after reading it. Although Newgate's ability is not high, he is still safe and sound. Every step is according to his plan. When Jack saw the second letter, his face darkened. He didn't expect that this bastard, Karakshu, would be so arrogant again after just being honest for a while. When he was with Jack before, Karakshu behaved very honestly, but dragons are dragons after all. As they get older, they will slowly regard all creatures other than riders as prey, including humans. Moreover, dragons are very intelligent and will also have a rebellious period. Thinking of this, Jack decided to keep Karakshu with him at all times in the future. Otherwise, if he continues to let it go like this, it will be wild enough, but it may grow completely crooked. When Jack saw the third letter, his face became strange. Water monsters eat people. Jack's first reaction was to disbelieve it, but then he remembered that he was in the world of ice and fire. Whether it is the original novel or the TV series, what is shown in it is just the tip of the iceberg. Moreover, the world of ice and fire is also a magical world after all. It is not impossible to think that there are some unknown fantasy creatures. After tearing up the letter and throwing it into the furnace inside the pyramid, Jack had to go back to Atlantis. Since he had a plan, Jack did not waste time and went directly to Daenerys, saying that he was going out for a trip and would be back in about 2 to 3 months. Dany was stunned when she heard this and suddenly worried that Jack was ready to run away, until Jack said that there were some problems with his dragon and he had to deal with it himself. Dany finally felt relieved and then slowly raised her legs, with her soft and white feet resting on Jack's knees. Since it takes at least a month to go back, then don't leave tonight and leave tomorrow morning. After saying that, Dany blinked her big eyes, and her right hand kept playing with her long silver hair, waiting for Jack's answer. Jack looked at the pure little Dany, and then looked at the sky outside, and found that it was indeed late today, so he decided to leave early tomorrow morning. Dany smiled confidently and directly locked Jack's waist with her legs. But Jack slapped her hard on the butt. Dany groaned in pain and immediately looked at Jack with tears in her eyes, and a bright red slap mark appeared at the same time. "I'll go arrange a speedboat first and come back to deal with you later." After saying that, Jack left Dana's room, leaving Dany holding the pillow and gently rubbing her sore spot. The next day, 301 AC, July 2nd. The news of Jack's departure from Meereen spread quickly. Even though Jack had arranged the development plan for the next few months, it still caused a lot of panic. Because many things were arranged by Jack himself, Jack actually left Meereen on the eve of the war. How could others not think too much about it? But soon the True Dragon Pyramid released the news that the Prime Minister was out to pick up his dragon and would be back in 2 months. At that time, Meereen would be protected by 4 dragons. In this way, Dany released the news according to Jack's method. Sure enough, the panic at the bottom of Meereen quickly subsided. But Dany also realized Jack's strong influence in Meereen. After thinking it over again and again, Dany decided to take advantage of Jack's absence to handle government affairs in person. At the same time, she was ready to come forward to comfort the workers in Meereen. This will not only improve her prestige in the management of Meereen, but also improve her status in the hearts of the free people. And Dany is also going to bring dozens of pigs when she comforts those workers. This is a method she learned from Jack. Any condolences from the superiors, even if they only bring a little worthless benefits, the group of bottom level free people will be grateful. Thinking of this, he immediately asked his servants to buy 50 fat pigs. It only takes 3 to 4 silver coins to buy a fat pig, and the specific price is related to the weight of the pig. Even if calculated according to the highest price in the Meereen market, 50 fat pigs only cost 200 silver coins. The purchasing power of gold dragons is so terrifying that 50 fat pigs weighing 3 or 400 kilograms only cost 2 gold dragons. Therefore, Dany planned to visit once a week for 2 consecutive months. Similarly, Jack's departure also made the conservatives in Meereen active. thinking that their opportunity had come. Chapter 80 Conspiracy. The pyramid of the Zak family is the shortest of the pyramids in Myrene, only 40 to 50 meters high. But at this time, 6 great masters gathered in the pyramid. The 6 of them are representatives of the reactionary families in Myrene. That is, the conservatives who want to drive diners out of the Slavers Bay. It is strange to say that there are a total of 15 great master families in Myrene, and the strongest Daznak and Carol families are pro-dragon factions. The 7 neutral families, Glazer, Hazaka, Kantak, Nachan, Pa, Kurza, and Riznak, are also middle-class nobles. On the contrary, the 6 reactionary families, except for the 6th and 7th families of Lorak and Merrick, the remaining 4 families of Rahada, Uaz, Yazan, and Zak directly took the last 4 places. In the American TV series, it was these small great masters who united to fund the assassination of the Sons of the Harpy. At the same time, it also made Daenerys fall into the Myrene knot and wasted several years trapped in the Slavers Bay. And now, with Jack's help, the Sons of the Harpy they sponsored did not cause a big disturbance. Even because of the report of a group of untouchables, a large number of Sons of the Harpy were caught before they took any action. Lorak sat in the main seat. Although he looked like a skinny old man, no one dared to look down on him. Loke scanned the crowd with his narrow and sinister eyes, and then said in an unusually hoarse voice, "Jack Poseidon, the little beast, has left Myrene. He is not cheating. What do you think?" When the news of Jack's departure came at first, they thought it was another conspiracy by Jack. It was not, until now that they were sure that Jack had really left Myrene. Lord Zachary suggested, "Since he has left Myrene, we may try to increase investment in the Sons of the Harpy." But he was immediately opposed. Even if the Sons of the Harpy increase investment, it will not have a significant effect. Jack Poseidon has left, but the joint household system has not left. Everyone talked about it, but no one could convince anyone else. Only Lorak looked at the arguing people coldly. Then Loke looked at his right hand, a young fat man who remained silent and smiled. The current head of the Merrick family, Harding Merrick. The strength of the Merrick family is similar to that of the Lorak family, and old Merrick and Loke are still good friends. At that time, the relationship between the two families was good. But since the death of old Merrick, his eldest son Harding Merrick took over, and the relationship between the two families became subtle. Because Harding is different from his stupid father, this little fat man is a pure smiling tiger, and even Loke can't guess what he is thinking. This group of reactionaries was led by Loke, who patted the table gently, and everyone immediately quieted down. "It's not a good idea for everyone to keep arguing like this. Harding, what do you think?" Harding glanced at Loke, still smiling, and said, "I have the least seniority, so naturally I respect the elders." Harding sneered in his heart. Loke, this cunning old man, was still staring at him. Back then, Harding's father was deceived by Loke and became a stupid goose, and the strength of the entire Merrick family declined a lot. He once persuaded his father, but his father firmly believed that Loke was his good brother and would not cheat him. It was not until his father suddenly died of illness that he inherited the family business and became the great master of Merrick that the family's strength slowly recovered. And Harding was 100% sure that his brother had aided the sudden death of his father, but he had always pretended not to know. Seeing that Harding was unwilling to say more, Loke stopped instigating Harding and directly expressed his opinion. Loke took out a letter and said, "This is a letter from Krasnes, the great sage of Yunkai." Everyone took the letter and read it in turn. After reading it, everyone showed uncontrollable excitement on their faces. Great. The coalition has confirmed that it will surround the Slavers Bay in December this year. That will be the date of Daenerys' death. Originally, the Anti-Dragon King coalition was going to attack in September, but it took a lot of time for all forces to gather. According to estimates, the alliance will arrive in the Slavers Bay in December at the earliest. Fortunately, the world of ice and fire does not have 4 seasons, otherwise the slave owners would have to waste half a year. Loke smiled sinisterly and said, "In December this year, the Alliance army will be divided into 2 groups. The navy, consisting of 300 warships of Atlantis, will blockade the maritime trade of Myrene, and Krasnes of Yunkai will lead the army and mercenaries composed of the city-states of the Alliance to Myrene. We will let the sons of the Harpy, who are in action, deliberately reveal their flaws and be captured, and then keep our troops in place, so that they think that the sons of the Harpy have been eliminated. At the same time, we will secretly recruit a large number of sons of the Harpy. When the Alliance army surrounds Meereen, we will directly attack. With the cooperation of inside and outside, Daenerys will definitely not have room to fight back. After hearing Loke's plan, everyone's eyes lit up. This plan is good. First, let the Mother of Dragons relax her vigilance, and then take action at the critical moment, to catch her off guard. Everyone admired Loke very much, and at the same time, they were more wary of Loke, who was really too insidious. Suddenly, Loke seemed to remember something. Hardin, I heard from the servants that you bought a lot of salt land under management outside Meereen. Everyone looked at Hardin. They all knew that the salt land was a project of Daenerys. Wouldn't buying salt land mean bowing to Daenerys? Even the Merrick family has already surrendered to Daenerys. Question mark? Yes, it is said that the salt land has recovered to a certain extent after being irrigated by the canal. It is said that the first batch of salt land irrigated by the river has begun to grow crops. Hardin's face remained unchanged, and he admitted it openly. At the same time, he was very surprised. How could Loke know that he had acquired part of the salt land? There was a traitor under his hands. Hardin immediately thought of the biggest possibility. Otherwise Loke would not have received the news less than a week after he bought it. Hardin, don't you know that salt land management is a project that Daenerys Targaryen is doing? What's the difference between you doing this and surrendering to Daenerys Targaryen? Loke looked heartbroken, as if he had been betrayed. Hardin smiled lightly and said slowly, I just bought some land to plant olives. These lands are mine. After I bought them, I'm not farming for Daenerys. If this is considered a surrendering to Daenerys, then Loke, you know that the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce and Jack Poseidon have a close relationship. But you still want to join various stores under the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce. Are you also surrendering to Jack Poseidon? Loke's face changed when he heard this. He originally wanted to find something for Harding Merrick, but he didn't expect that the other party actually knew that he wanted to join the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 81 Centralization and Enfeoffment. Harding bought the land to plant olive trees because their family's business depends entirely on the slave trade. Once the slave trade is hit, the family will suffer too many uncertainties, and the industry is too single and has no risk resistance. For example, now that Daenerys Targaryen has liberated the slaves, the Merrick family has directly lost its source of income and can only live on its old capital. The same is true for the other 5 families, whose only pillar of family industry is the slave trade. It is precisely because of this that they have become reactionaries in Meereen, constantly trying to drive Daenerys out of the slave bay and restore slavery. As for the pro-dragon faction and the neutral faction, although they also rely on the slave trade to make money, they do not rely solely on the slave trade. They also sell olive oil and Giscari wine, etc. So even without the slave trade, they can still make money now. Especially the Daznak and Carroll families. Their manors in the Kaisa Mountains still have a large number of olive trees planted, and the original wall clearing did not affect them. And they also took the initiative to restore the slaves in the manor to free people. In addition to the necessary food every day, only 1 copper coin is needed to make the liberated slaves continue to work for them like slaves. In this way, with only a few insignificant copper coins, Daenerys has no reason to attack the manor in the mountains. To be honest, they also regretted not opening up a manor in the Catha Mountains. No one expected that a Daenerys would suddenly appear to liberate the slaves. In their eyes, Daenerys is a lunatic. At the beginning, Dany's ancestor Valyria was also a slave, and they just wanted to guard the foundation passed down by their ancestors, but inexplicably became evil and damned people. Similarly, Loke wanted to join the giant wave merchants, and he also discovered the problem of the family industry like Harding. But the two did not expect that they had undercovers planted by the other party under their hands. Then Loke laughed. Nephew Harding makes sense. It's true that you shouldn't be suspected of you, just based on this point. It's my uncle who is careless. Harding laughed and didn't say anything. Now the nephew and uncle are getting closer. Why didn't they do this just now? The other 4 nobles did not find anything wrong at all and just thought it was a simple misunderstanding. These 4 people are very consistent with the image of stupid and ignorant nobles. It can be said that they have nothing but money, including brains. Then the meeting of the 2 foxes and 4 idiots ended. And Myrene, on the surface, looks calm, but the dark has been turbulent. A month passed in a flash. To be precise, it should be 28 days. Jack took a clipper and returned to the Seeking Island in just 28 days. At this time, the number 1 pier of the Seeking City was full of people. They were all curious about what the Seeking, who had only heard of the name, looked like. Soon the hull docked, and Jack walked off the ship in a square step. The square step is steady and can make the superior look more majestic, especially the leader walking in a square step, which will give people a sense of safety and reliability. It's a pity that Jack didn't grow a beard and he looked less mature. But at the same time, Jack's young and handsome appearance also makes people feel emotional. Is that the Lord of the Sea? He looks so young. I heard from Lord Newgate that His Majesty the Sea King seems to be only 16 years old. How can he not be young? Great, His Majesty the Sea King is back, and that evil dragon can no longer be rampant. Brother, what happened to you? You actually said that the patron saint of the Seeking Island, Karakshu, is an evil dragon? Humph, that evil dragon ate the cow I bought. What do you think? Didn't Lord Newgate compensate you? Yes, 3 times the compensation, so I decided to take my newly bought cow and try my luck again. Amid the discussion of the crowd, Jack simply waved and said hello a few times and then quickly went to the Seeking Palace by the Cheyenne Lake. The planned Seeking City covers an area of 5,000 square kilometers, and the construction will start from the Seeking Palace in the center. However, at this time, the Seeking Palace is only a prototype. It can't even be called a prototype, but fortunately there are already habitable rooms inside. The total area of the Seychelles Islands is more than 20,000 square kilometers, of which the Seeking Island occupies half, 11,000 square kilometers. Reference, Cheyenne. 60% of the trees on the island have been cut down. Jack plans to leave 10% to make the island look a little green and cut down the rest. Your Majesty, you are finally back. I'm so worried. Newgate came out in a hurry. What happened on the island during this period of time made Newgate very worried. Whether it was the mischievous Karakshu or the mysterious water monster that has been causing panic recently, it gave him a headache. Jack frowned and said seriously, Newgate. Newgate was frightened by Jack's serious expression. He thought Jack was blaming himself for not doing a good job. Is your hair thinning again? It is often said that serving the emperor is like serving a tiger. At this time, Newgate finally understood the meaning of this sentence. Jack smiled and patted Newgate's arm and then walked towards the Seeking's palace. After Jack left, Vitiliel greeted Newgate and said, Grandpa Newgate, long time no see. Your white beard has grown longer. Don't you trim it? Newgate looked at Vitiliel kindly. Little girl, long time no see. You have grown so fast. The relationship between Newgate and Vitiliel was like that of a grandfather and grandson. At the beginning, Newgate took good care of Vitiliel. At this time, the sleeping Carrick suddenly felt a chill. He stood up suddenly and looked back, only to see a young man holding a wooden ruler looking at him with a gloomy face. Carrick turned his head and prepared to continue sleeping. When he stood up suddenly, his old father who was far away appeared. But unfortunately, Jack was really back, and then there was a commotion. When Newgate and Vitiliel arrived, Jack was already sitting on the throne, with Carrick crawling at his feet. Jack was looking through the government affairs on the desk. When he beat Carrick just now, Carrick got under the table. Just as he was about to turn over the table, he accidentally found a memorial on the table. It was a work report made by a man named Hakimi. What surprised Jack was that this man actually managed a logging team of 3,000 people. The most important thing was that this man was a high-level slave who was a teacher. Newgate, this Hakimi manages 3,000 people. Can a teacher manage it? Your Majesty, of course he can manage it, and the arrangements are in an orderly manner. These teachers and butlers are all good managers, much better than me. Jack was secretly shocked. He suddenly found that high-level slaves such as butlers and teachers were similar to the bachelors in Westeros. especially the butlers. Many noble families are similar to a small kingdom, and each high-level butler is equivalent to a king's hand. Even stronger than the king's hand. After all, the king's hand in Westeros is not selected based on the level of internal affairs ability. Now there are a total of 1,000 citizens who were born as butlers and teachers on the Seeking Island, plus the Chamber of Commerce buys some from outside from time to time, a total of 1,100 people. Even if we throw out 400 teachers, the remaining people seem to be enough to support Atlantis to establish a centralized society. Please give me some recommendation votes and monthly tickets. Thank you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Centralization. Jack carefully read the work reports submitted by the stewards appointed by Newgate, and found that these stewards were more useful than the scholar officials of the Celestial Empire. Even the senior slaves who were teachers had governance skills that were better than the stewards. After adapting to the work content, these teachers who were senior slaves were essentially the same as the scholars in Westeros, and reading and literacy were only the most basic. Astronomy, geography, history, politics, and even swordsmanship, these teachers had dabbled in. At this point, the university scholar and the group of teachers under Jack are undoubtedly ahead of the scholar officials of the Celestial Empire, and governing the country is naturally a piece of cake. In this case, Jack must choose between the feudal system and the centralized feudal system. It is impossible to directly cross over to the modern or even modern system, because productivity and people's wisdom cannot keep up. The first is the feudal system, which is to establish a country by enfeoffing princes. But as time goes by, the royal family will have no land to enfeoff, and if you don't pay attention, it will easily allow local princes to become bigger and stronger, resulting in the failure of imperial power and the chaos of princes. The centralized feudal system also has its shortcomings, the biggest of which is land annexation and incompetent rulers. In ancient China, the lifespan of a unified dynasty would not exceed 300 years. In the late dynasty, the powerful would use various means to seize the most important means of production in ancient times, land, and with the change of climate, once the cold climate period comes, coupled with a large number of landless refugees. Under such circumstances, unless there is a revival leader, even a wise king cannot save the feudal dynasty. After thinking this through, Jack also had a fixed number in his mind. Since any system has shortcomings, he might as well learn from the county system of the first emperor and strengthen centralization. At least Jack has the confidence to control a centralized feudal dynasty. As for how his own descendants will govern and develop Atlantis in the future, it is not something he, a founding emperor, can control. I just hope that by then, the founding emperor Jack Poseidon recorded in the history books of Atlantis will be a wise ruler and an emperor for all ages. In modern times, archaeologists and historians praise his glorious deeds every day. Jack was satisfied. Jack suddenly felt that his thoughts were clear. This problem that had troubled him since the establishment of Atlantis finally got what he thought was the most perfect solution. Newgate. Jack suddenly roared, scaring the two people and the dragon next to him. Especially the Karakshu under Jack's feet. It widened its eyes, which were not big to begin with, as if saying, "Psycho, why are you roaring so loudly?" Although Newgate was startled, he quickly reacted and said, "Your Majesty, I'm here. Give the order to have a big banquet tonight. I'll treat you. Take out all the stored meat and wine, and invite every Atlantean to have a good meal. By the way, don't take out the Poseidon brew. That thing is too expensive." Newgate. Although he didn't know what Jack was crazy about, Newgate still went to arrange the banquet. Now there are 31,000 people in Atlantis, and the cost of the banquet is not low. Soon the news that His Majesty the Sea-King held a banquet in the Sea-King Palace spread throughout the island, and countless people cheered. You must know that when the Sea-King Palace was built, Newgate prohibited anyone, except craftsmen, from approaching. Everyone couldn't help but sigh that His Majesty the Sea-King's generosity was really not comparable to Newgate, a stingy man. Ashley was one of the carnival crowd. Seeking Island does not restrict its own business. Riding on the rapid development of Seeking Island, she directly opened a tailor shop. As her skills in making clothes became more and more advanced, her business naturally became more and more prosperous. Ashley got out of bed and began to look for clothes. Looking at her husband who was still unsatisfied, she urged, "Mark, get up and put on your clothes quickly. We will go to the Seeking Palace to attend the Seeking's banquet later. Why are you in a hurry? The banquet will start at 7 o'clock. It's only 4 o'clock now, and there are still 3 hours. Atlantis has a detailed 24-hour time division." Jack divided it by referring to the time measurement methods of the Ice and Fire world and his previous life. In the long summer period, it was light at 4 or 5 in the morning and dark at 8 in the evening. It may not be as accurate as Jack's previous life, but as long as the time is unified, it is accurate and can provide convenience for daily life and work. Ashley rolled her eyes. Haha, you are so tired in just 10 minutes. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You still want to have 10 children? Mark jumped up from the bed. Who are you talking about? Mark went up and picked up Ashley and then threw her directly on the bed. Hey, what are you doing? Let you know if I can do it. 20 minutes later, Ashley put on the dress she made with a ruddy face. Mark put on his clothes slowly and leisurely. He looked quite handsome, but his expression looked a little listless. Let's go. Let's take some front row seats first. It is said that the seats for this banquet are on a first come, first served basis. After saying that, she pulled Mark onto the carriage. This carriage was bought with the first pot of gold she earned. In Neptune City, as long as you have money, you can get what you want at the dot market, such as a carriage. It's just that you need to register to buy a carriage, and then you have to pay an extra 20 copper coins for the monthly property cleaning fee. Otherwise, you have to find someone to follow the carriage and shovel the fesses all the way. All the roads on Neptune Island are paved with cement, flat and wide. Mark drove the carriage to the Neptune Palace. When he was about to reach the Neptune Palace, he was surrounded by endless wheat fields. Neptune City occupies half of Neptune Island in the design, and Neptune Palace is located in the center of Neptune City, next to the number 1 grain production base. The number 1 grain production base is Newgate. Considering that if Neptune City is surrounded by enemy forces in the future, it can still rely on these 490,000 acres of fertile land to maintain consumption. The remaining other grain bases will be built outside Neptune City. The entire Neptune Island covers an area of 11,000 square kilometers, and Neptune City covers an area of 5,000 square kilometers. Of the remaining 6,000 square kilometers, 4,000 square kilometers will be used to create 6 million acres of fertile land for growing food. The remaining 2,000 square kilometers will be used to create 3 million acres of pasture for breeding. Everyone on Neptune Island knows these plans, because 30% of the planned fertile land and pasture will be sold to individuals. Mark borrowed a 30-year loan from the Imperial Bank and bought 300 acres of fertile land and 200 acres of pasture. Mark is also one of the few people who borrowed money to buy land, and more people are still waiting and watching. After all, they are still not very reassured about government loans, and always feel that there are scams. Chapter 83 Noble Atlanteans. When Ashley and Mark arrived at the Seeking's Palace, not many people came. They came very early. At this time, rows of tables extended from the Seeking's Palace to the outside, directly surrounding the entire Seeking's Palace. The surrounding area was densely packed with tables and chairs. Ashley pulled Mark into the hall, which was already full of people. Only the edge of the hall had empty seats. Ashley and Mark quickly grabbed their seats. At this time, Jack was sitting in the center of the hall, describing the blueprint for the future to the people below. Population is the most important thing for us. One day, the Atlanteans will stand in every corner of the world. So starting tomorrow, I will set up a civil marriage office, and every newlywed couple will go to the marriage office to register. Only in this way can it be considered a legal marriage. We will show a marriage certificate. When we have children in the future, we can take the marriage certificate to the Ministry of Civil Security to register the child's information and receive childbirth subsidies. Jack talked freely in his seat, and he drew one big cake after another. The audience below was full before the dishes were served. Everyone stared at the young king on the throne with shining eyes. The beautiful life they had never imagined was constantly clear in the mouth of the young king. Time passed slowly in Jack's bragging, and soon exquisite dishes were served. The dishes included stir-fried vegetables, fried sea fish, barbecue, and sausages. The staple foods included bread, fried dough sticks, flatbreads, steamed buns, pancakes, and various buns and hot pies. Atlantis followed Newgate and other first followers of Jack in eating, and Newgate and his people also got used to eating with Jack. Maybe the nobles were not used to eating the celestial cuisine, but for the slaves, the celestial cuisine was no worse than the bread, milk, and barbecue that the nobles ate. Even after getting used to it, the white bread that used to make them greedy was not delicious anymore. Jack raised his glass, stood up and said loudly, "Dear noble people of Atlantis, we want to make Atlanteans the noblest nation in the world. Cheers to the future. Cheers." The banquet officially began, and the content of people's chat was, unsurprisingly, the grand blueprint that Jack had drawn before the banquet began. "Noble Atlanteans," since this banquet has become their catchphrase. Jack smiled at this scene, and at this moment everyone will have a sense of belonging and national self-confidence. And then, after the birth of his first child, a royal family and a powerful empire of feudal monarchy will become complete. Because when the heart of the ocean was transplanted, the system said that it would change Jack's genes. That is to say, Jack's child will also inherit the ability of the heart of the ocean, which will be the absolute symbol of the Sea King's lineage. After 7 days, Jack will hold a sacrifice, and the target of the sacrifice is Poseidon. At that time, he will explain his ability to breathe underwater as a blessing from the god of the sea, and then let Poseidon appear and kill the so-called water monster. In this way, Jack firmly sat on the position of Poseidon. Never underestimate the help that myths and legends bring to the throne. Sometimes it is even more useful than 100,000 troops. Especially in a magical world, like Game of Thrones. Maybe Poseidon can become a god, if he is worshipped too much. The banquet lasted until 11 o'clock. This banquet cost 12,000 gold dragons, but the effect was also very obvious. The next day, just as Jack was about to go to Newgate, Newgate came to him with his own successor. "Your Majesty, I have something to discuss with you." Jack looked at the hesitant Newgate and laughed. "Is there anything else you, Newgate, dare not say?" "Your Majesty, then I'll be frank. Now the soap factory, fine salt factory and brewery on Crescent Island have been basically completed." "Well, so what? You want me to work in the soap factory?" "Your Majesty, don't joke. What I mean is that Atlantis has a stable income now. You don't have to go back to Myrene." Jack raised his eyebrows. Newgate always gave him advice before, but never advised him not to do something. "Why don't you go back?" Jack looked at the young man next to Newgate. "Tell me, this is your idea, right?" The young man was not at all flustered. He stepped forward and bowed first. "Your Majesty, my name is Asidorf. I used to be a slave steward. Fortunately, I was appreciated by Prime Minister Newgate and became the Prime Minister's attendant." Jack nodded expressionlessly. "Tell me why you persuaded me to stay on Poseidon Island. If you can't explain it, I will let Karakshu eat your head." Asidorf's heart tightened. Even though Newgate told him that His Majesty the Poseidon actually had a good personality, he was still a little nervous facing Jack's threats and aura. But after all, he was the successor chosen by Newgate. Asidorf quickly adjusted his mentality and said, "Your Majesty, the factory on Crescent Island is basically completed now, and Atlantis's finances will have a stable income in the future, so the money you embezzled from Myrene is no longer necessary. Secondly, you have helped Daenerys Targaryen gain a foothold in Myrene. Myrene will become the center of war next, and you are not safe there. It is better to stay on the Sea King Island, to take charge of the overall situation. War money is the easiest to make. Finally, I heard that the Mother of Dragons is the most beautiful woman in the world, and I hope you can focus on the development of Atlantis." After Asidorf finished the last point, he quietly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In the last sentence, he was reminding Jack not to be blinded by beauty, but this sentence is very likely to make Jack chop off his head. Because he heard from the giant wave chamber of commerce that His Majesty the Sea King had an unusual relationship with Daenerys Targaryen. However, the anger that Aciddle expected did not appear. Jack's reaction caught him off guard. He just looked at him quietly without saying anything. After more than 10 seconds of silence, a layer of cold sweat oozed out of Aciddle's back, and the torment continued to erode his originally calm heart. He was an ambitious man. After learning about Jack's character from Newgate, he wanted to express himself through the above words. But if he didn't control the intensity well, he would most likely kill himself. But Jack just looked at him quietly without any expression, so he had no idea what Jack was thinking at the moment. Newgate was also a little panicked. After all, he brought Aciddle here. If he made Jack angry, he would inevitably be implicated. Chapter 84. The Prime Minister is old. You should encourage yourself. Just as the atmosphere was becoming more and more depressing, Jack suddenly laughed. Jack stood up and patted Aciddle on the shoulder. Aciddle, but, the Prime Minister is old. You have to work hard. Aciddle was not excited when he heard this. After Jack's silence, Jack's words made him a little scared. He didn't know what Jack was thinking. You came so early, have you eaten? Jack asked suddenly. Your Majesty, we really haven't eaten. Newgate said directly. In that case, let's sit down and eat together. Come on, prepare 2 more breakfasts. By the way, Aciddle, do you like white bread, or steamed buns, and fried dough sticks? Aciddle's eyes jumped, and he said without hesitation, of course I like steamed buns, and fried dough sticks. These delicacies you created are delicious. This sentence was said a little bit against his will, but it was only a little against his will. As a high-level slave, Aciddle ate well under the slave owner, including wheat bread, milk, eggs, sausages, etc. So he was not like ordinary slaves. He used to eat the same food as livestock and could adapt to fried dough sticks and steamed buns. Although he felt that the taste of steamed buns and fried dough sticks was okay, he preferred to eat a piece of bread and drink a cup of warm milk in the morning. But he certainly couldn't tell the truth at this time. In his opinion, Jack was not as friendly as Newgate said, but a moody young king. Newgate sat in front of Jack openly, while Aciddle was a little nervous. Soon the maids brought up the 2 prepared breakfasts. Aciddle saw the breakfast placed in front of him by the maid. His face suddenly changed, and cold sweat instantly soaked his back. It's bad. There are bad people among the crowd. Jack smiled and said, what's wrong? Don't you like it? I remember that you have a piece of bread and a cup of warm milk every morning. Although Jack was not on the Seeking Island, the Seeking Island was his carefully built base, so it was naturally impossible to really leave it alone. At that time, Jack bribed some people to be spies in the first group of people. Now this group of people has become regular spies of Seagull. Don't stand there, eat quickly. Newgate also found something wrong and immediately reminded Aciddle. Jack picked up a small soup dumpling and stuffed it into his mouth, saying vaguely, eat, eat. Eating is the happiest thing. After eating, all worries are gone. Aciddle was relieved when he heard this. What Jack meant was that after this meal, I can let you lie. Aciddle ate the bread in big mouthfuls and then drank the milk in one breath. Don't say it. This feeling of surviving a disaster made the bread and milk sweeter. Newgate and Jack ate and talked. As the person who followed Jack the longest, he had completely adapted to Jack's eating habits. It's just that, after he became the Prime Minister, he asked Ratcha to search the world, but he didn't find the snack called instant noodles. Aciddle is right, and his analysis of the situation is very accurate, so I have decided not to return to Meereen. Newgate was relieved to hear Jack's decision, but he still said, I heard from the merchant's fleet that you told Queen Daenerys that you would return in 2 months. Is that okay? Newgate was worried that Jack would offend Daenerys and create an enemy out of thin air. Jack said you were overthinking it. Daenerys and I are not really superiors and subordinates. To put it bluntly, I'm her advisor, helping her gain a foothold in the Slavers' Bay. Once she has gained a foothold, she will be involved in a long war with the slave owners, at least until her dragon grows up. So even if I don't go back, she won't turn against us, and she will even get close to us. After all, with my relationship with her, Meereen and Atlantis are potential allies. And we can take advantage of this time to develop steadily, and we can also reduce the strength of both the free trade cities and Meereen, and make money by selling grain and wine. Jack expressed his thoughts. Originally, she was going to use the beauty trick to take in Danny, her dragons, and the Unsullied. But later he found that, even if Danny was beaten to the point of rolling her eyes, she would not give up her army and dragons. Her obsession with the Iron Throne has penetrated her blood, so Jack can either become the king's husband, or be a lover. Therefore, his promise to Danny is dispensable in his eyes. Of course, Jack still has to write a letter and make an excuse. If he didn't say anything and didn't go back, then with Daenerys' love brain, Jack was really worried that she would ride a dragon to burn him in the future. After hearing Jack's words, Newgate was relieved. After all, it is better to have one more friend than one more enemy, and an enemy with a dragon. The two ate and talked. Now the army of Atlantis only has about 7,000 Unsullied, and the official navy has recruited 3,000 people. A total of 10,000 people. Jack is going to train the Unsullied into the navy and replace them with new equipment. Of course, this takes time, and Jack is not in a hurry. Now Atlantis has only more than 30,000 people, and it is impossible to support a standing army of 10,000 people. He still needs these people to open up wasteland and farm. The Unsullied are simply invincible for cutting trees and plowing fields. The efficiency is very high, and not lazy at all. In addition, there are large ships sent to Bravos for transformation. The transformation will be completed in 2 months. At that time, Atlantis will have a real navy. While the two were talking, a Sidov next to them was amazed. He originally thought that Atlantis' finances had hit the bottom, but he didn't expect that there were still 3 million gold dragons. Jack even had 500,000 gold dragons in Meereen that he hadn't taken back, but the Chamber of Commerce would bring the money back when it went to Meereen next month. After Jack finished his meal, Newgate had just finished his meal and asked the servants to clean up the dishes. Jack followed Newgate to the place where the sea monster was eating people. This was what Jack had originally called Newgate for, but Newgate came with a sit-off, so Jack temporarily put the matter aside. Soon Jack and the other 5 came to the place where the sea monster was eating people, and the little secretary Vitilia also came. As a capable secretary, Vitilia must always protect Jack. In addition to Vitilia, there is also Jet. This guy has grown rapidly in strength in recent months, and Newgate has bought many top gladiators for him as sparring partners. Moreover, these gladiators have all become King's Goods, and Newgate has formed a 9-man King's Good around Jet. According to Newgate, the Iron Throne has 7 King's Goods, so our Sea King must have 9. Moreover, in the myth of the sea god's creation of the world compiled by Jack, 9 is the extreme number, and Newgate himself is particularly obsessed with the number 9. Chapter 85 because it looks professional. Newgate took Jack to the place where the 2 workers were swallowed. There was nothing to be seen here, and Newgate didn't know what it meant to protect the scene. Moreover, a month had passed, and it was useless to protect the scene. Jack squatted down, picked up a handful of soil and smelled it, then frowned and looked at the surface of Cheyenne Lake. Seeing Jack like this, Vitelli asked curiously, "Did you see anything?" Jack shook his head. "Of course not. A month has passed. What can I see?" "Then why are you smelling the mud and looking at the lake with a serious face?" Jack said as a matter of course, because it looks more professional. Vitelli, Asadov, Newgate, Jet. Maybe he finally felt a little embarrassed. Jack changed the subject. "Has anyone seen the sea monster?" "Yes, since the 2 people were dragged into the water, there have been a steady stream of witnesses, but they all described it differently. But the size of the monster they described is not much different, about 6 meters. Newgate gestured as he said this. Atlantis used the measurement units specified by Jack. Standardization and unification of units is one of the necessary conditions for the birth of an industrial base. 6 meters? Jack was a little surprised. He originally thought it was some relatively large and ferocious fish, but after thinking about it carefully, it was not big enough to drag 2 adult boys down. "Do you still have the legend of the sea god's creation of the world that I gave you before?" "Yes, I have kept it well." Jack nodded and ordered, "Gather everyone tonight, and then arrange someone to tell them the story of the sea god's creation of the world. On August 9th, we will hold the first sacrificial ceremony." Newgate said cautiously, "Your Majesty, is it really useful to sacrifice to the sea god?" What if the sea monster still eats people after the sacrifice to the sea god? Wouldn't it damage your prestige? Jack patted Newgate on the shoulder. Do you still remember the giant beast that created the world and the myth of the sea god's creation of the world? Newgate nodded. Of course he remembered that the sea god Godzilla created the world in the creation of the world. After Godzilla used the sea blue sea god's holy light to cut the world apart, he held the sky on his back and stepped on the earth. It was with the growth of Godzilla that the distance between heaven and earth became so far. This is the creation of the world and the myth. At that time, Newgate was deeply attracted by the story. He read it more than 10 times and still felt unsatisfied. He would turn it over once a day. What Newgate didn't know was that he was actually addicted to novels. The myth of the sea god opening the sky was adapted by Jack, based on the novels of the prehistoric times in his previous life. Not to mention Newgate, even Jack was deeply attracted by the prehistoric novels, especially the magnificent scenes written by authors with good writing skills, which particularly attracted Jack. Just know it, we will hold a sacrifice at the mouth of the galaxy. The river and the sea will be clearly separated at the confluence. The sea god Godzilla will appear and help us eliminate the water monster. Newgate was a little unconvinced, but when he thought of the legend of opening the sky written by Jack, and Jack himself was full of legends, Newgate suddenly felt that it was not impossible. But since His Majesty said so, it would be wrong for him to doubt it again. That afternoon, Newgate gathered everyone together to tell the story of the sea god opening the sky. The content of the story is not complicated. It is said that 30 million years ago, the world had no light, no life, and no distinction between land and sea. The whole world was a chaos and nothingness. After an unknown amount of time, a soul flower bloomed in the chaos bell, and inside the flower was bred the world's first god, Godzilla the sea. Godzilla was born with supreme power, and then Godzilla the sea used the holy light of the sea to cut through the chaos, and just like that, the world had the first ray of light. After Godzilla cut through the chaos, the upper half of the world turned into the sky, and the lower half turned into the earth. But the good times didn't last long. Godzilla the sea found that the sky and the earth were slowly getting closer, so Godzilla the sea used his shoulders to support the sky, and stepped on the earth, and abruptly stopped the sky and the earth from fitting together. As time passed, Godzilla the sea grew up day by day, and the distance between the sky and the earth became farther and farther. Finally, 10 million years ago, with the fall of Godzilla the sea, the sky and the earth were no longer close, and became what they are now. The fallen body of Godzilla the sea turned into all things in the world. His breath became wind and clouds, his voice became thunder, his left eye became the sun, and his right eye became the moon, his limbs became the 4 directions of east, west, south, and north. His body became the 5 sacred mountains, his blood became rivers, lakes, and seas, his hair became plants and trees. The most special thing is that the sea god divided his soul into 3 parts, which became 3 things. These 3 things are the continuation of the sea god, an egg that breeds the new Godzilla, which is said to be hidden in the deepest part of the ocean. When the red comet reappears, the new Godzilla will reappear in the world and protect the Atlantean people. The heart of the ocean, a heart formed by the fusion of the soul of the sea god in the flesh and blood of the heart of the sea god. Those who have this heart will grow gills behind their ears, can breathe in water, and can summon the sea god Godzilla through sacrificial ceremonies. The dragon egg, a great creation of the sea god's soul, is said to be obtained by the first lizard between heaven and earth. As a result, the lizard was eaten by the first bat between heaven and earth, before it could fuse. In the end, the bat fused this part of the soul, and evolved into the Sky Overlord, the real dragon today. After the sea god Godzilla transformed into all things, the whole world ushered in a carnival. This stage was called the biological explosion period, and various monsters, dinosaurs, were born. These monsters were huge and powerful, and they dominated the world at that time. As countless years passed, the world's resources became less and less, and at this time, war broke out. The most powerful dragon clan took the lead in launching a war of genocide against other races, and other races were not to be outdone and united to fight against the most powerful true dragon clan. It is unknown which side won this war, but since then, the true dragons, including those monsters, have all disappeared. In the millions of years that followed, a new creature appeared. They were the earliest humans, also known as Atlanteans, who called themselves the sons of the sea god. Since then, humans have gradually stepped onto the world stage. After the monsters disappeared, no other creatures were rivals of humans. The powerful Atlanteans built the first city in human history on a huge island. Since then, the world has been ruled by the Atlanteans for 3 million years. Later, the increasingly powerful Atlanteans began to no longer respect the god of the sea. They pushed down the statue of the god of the sea and demolished the temple of the god of the sea. Therefore, the will left by the god of the sea became furious and launched a tsunami that covered the world. After seeing the horror of the god of the sea, the Atlanteans created the world's largest ship, Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark is tens of thousands of meters long. It saved 100,000 women and children in Atlantis when the tsunami hit. When the tsunami dissipated, these 100,000 people hid their identities and completely disappeared in the long river of history. After the disappearance of the Atlanteans, countless races were born in the world. They fought and conquered each other at the same time. After a long war of annexation, the GIs conquered every corner of the known world and became the overlord of the new era. Until 5,000 years ago, the Valyrians found the gift of the god of the sea at the 14 volcanoes, dragon eggs. The real dragons did not become extinct. They preserved the fire in that genocide. Until the arrival of the Valyrians, they hatched dragon eggs. But the dragon eggs had been sleeping for too long, and the hatched dragons were no longer as powerful and wise as their ancestors. They were no longer real dragons, but giant dragons. The Valyrians tamed them, and still called them real dragons, because even if they were not as powerful as their ancestors, they were still the most powerful creatures in the world. The Valyrians relied on dragons to defeat the Empire of Gis and establish a more powerful empire, the Freehold of Valyria. Although Valyria conquered Gis by force, it was because of the powerful fighting power of the dragons, so Gis conquered Valyria in civilization and culture. Valyria continued the slave city-state system of Gis, so the Andals fled to Westeros, and the Moon Sena led a group of people to establish Bravos. Later, it was the well-known Doomsday Catastrophe. The Valyrian civilization collapsed overnight, and Aegon Targaryen I conquered Westeros and became the king of the Seven Kingdoms. The Valyrian colonies in Essos became independent and became the free trade city-states of today, and the Dothraki began to emerge. Later, the Targaryen dynasty was overthrown, and now only Daenerys Targaryen is left alive. Of course, there are still some Blackfire bloodlines with impure blood. There are many details in the myth of Poseidon's creation of the world, so the people arranged by Newgate told it for 5 hours. When everyone heard the end of the myth, they all showed disappointed expressions. The story was too exciting, and ended too quickly. Everyone was discussing the myth of Poseidon's creation of the world. Just as everyone was talking to each other, Newgate suddenly released news that shocked everyone. First, the myth is not false. Second, the new sea god Godzilla has been born, just under the Seychelles. Third, the heart of the ocean has merged with His Majesty the Sea King, and His Majesty the Sea King is the last pure-blooded Atlantean in the world. 6 days later, on August 9th, His Majesty the Sea King will hold a sacrificial ceremony at the mouth of the galaxy, and on that day, he will use seawater that has merged with his own blood to transform everyone into Atlanteans. At the same time, as the legend goes, through sacrifice, Godzilla, the god of the sea, will be summoned to destroy the water monster in Cheyenne Lake. Everyone was dazed as they digested Newgate's words. What does it mean? After listening to the myth, I really want to become a noble Atlantean, right? Chapter 86 Sacrifice Ceremony. 301 AC. The day that everyone had been waiting for finally arrived. Everyone finished breakfast early and headed for the estuary of the galaxy. Today they did not have to work, but to participate in the first sacrifice at the estuary. They also wanted to know what would happen to them after the Sea King converted them into Atlanteans. Of course, what they were looking forward to more was not the conversion of blood, but whether the mythical sea god Godzilla would appear. The galaxy runs through the entire Sea King Island, and the estuary in the southeast is the location of this sacrifice. In the past few days, Jack arranged thousands of people to quickly build a temple of the sea god. Because of the tight time, the temple looks relatively simple. But it doesn't matter. The water is no longer deep, and the dragon is spiritual. When Godzilla appears, people will automatically ignore the simple temple. The time for the sacrifice was set at 10 o'clock in the morning, and Jack came to the temple of the sea god early to prepare. Jack attached great importance to this sacrifice, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a good opportunity to deify Jack himself. Jack was going to rebuild the foundation of modern science and speed up the pace of industrialization, so it was inevitable to enlighten the people. But enlightenment was not so friendly to feudal society, and ancient society was unequal. Once people could read and write, they would unconsciously pursue equality and then shout the slogan, "Are there any kings, princes, generals or ministers?" Especially after people were full and satisfied, they always liked to find some trouble for themselves. So Jack was going to simplify the pyramid from monarch, ministers, and people to monarch, officials, and people, so as to achieve disguised equality, to ease the social contradictions after the enlightenment of people's wisdom. Simply put, under the monarchy, officials and people are equal before the law. The monarchy makes laws and implements laws, but does not act within the rules of the law. To realize this idea, Jack's own monarchy must be deified. Let the monarchy and theocracy be integrated. The king is the incarnation of God, and is not bound by secular laws. In the ancient centralized feudal society, the monarch often used the means of fooling the people, to make the people have a superstition about themselves, thinking that the monarch and his heirs are the natural rulers of the country. But how to make people superstitious? Often through three methods: the deification of human race, the mystification of human body, and the sanctification of personality. However, Jack is not sure whether this method is effective. But with Godzilla and Karakshu, even if the tree grows crooked, Jack has the ability to repair it. What's more, Atlantis is an empire built from scratch. There is still a big difference between the 7 kingdoms of Westeros and the free trade city-states of Essos. Hiss. Karakshu made a dragon roar, and then slowly landed beside Jack. At this time, Jack was directing the servants to put the 3 major animals of pigs, cattle and sheep in place, and then personally put the 3 minor animals of chickens, ducks, and fish on the plates. "Are the fruit plates and noodle fruit plates ready?" Jack asked. "Everything is ready, Your Majesty. 4 plates of different fruits, 4 plates of different pastries." Karakshu stared at the 3 major animals placed in front of him, and it was obvious that he was greedy again. Jack patted Karakshu's head gently. "When we get back, we'll make barbecue for you. Don't try to eat it secretly, or I'll let Poseidon peel your skin off." Karakshu shook his head and retracted his gaze, but he was not afraid of Poseidon. After all, he had never seen Poseidon. He just listened to Jack's words. Time passed slowly. At 8 o'clock, everyone was there. Under New Gate's arrangement, they stood quietly in the open space in front of the temple of Poseidon. In the last hour, Jack asked everyone below to give a small bowl with half a bowl of water in it. Everyone looked at the blood water in the bowl curiously. There was red stuff like gravel in the water. This stuff was of course not Jack's blood, but Karakshu's dragon fesses. Dragon fesses are soft when they first come out, but they will become as hard as metal as time goes by. When the dragon fesses are ground into powder and put into water, this kind of red quicksand like blood water will be formed. This thing is not the point. After all, the ancient Atlanteans made it up, so it doesn't matter whether the blood water has any effect. After 10 o'clock, the sacrifice officially began. Jack appeared in a blue royal robe embroidered with Godzilla. This is a little different from the traditional golden royal robe, but it is very consistent with the culture of Atlantis. It won't feel awkward after getting used to it. Jack first read out the prepared sacrificial words in Chinese. Jack had no other ideas, but simply needed a language that others couldn't understand, but could make others feel powerful. Then 3 incense sticks were lit in the altar. According to Jack's request, everyone knelt down and kowtowed after drinking the blood water. Although the people behind didn't know what happened, they felt inexplicably solemn and followed suit. Jack didn't kneel down at the front, but bowed. In myths and legends, the heart of the ocean and the newly born Godzilla are of the same level. Then, everyone kowtowed 3 times, and bowed 9 times at Jack's request, and then Jack took off his blue royal robe, and came to the altar. The altar was built close to the shore, 9 meters high and 3 meters wide, with a total of 33 steps. There was a half-person high incense burner on the altar, and the sea was below the altar. Jack jumped into the sea. Newgate stepped forward and shouted loudly, "The Emperor is in heaven, shining on the earth. The spirit of the sea god, all living things. Everyone has his place, no matter now, or in the past." Newgate read it once in Valyrian, and then read it again in the common language, to make sure everyone could understand it. After reading it, Newgate said to everyone, "His Majesty the Sea King has contacted the sea god in the deep sea through sacrifices in the heart of the ocean. It won't be long before everyone can see the sea god." Newgate was very guilty when he said this. He knew that Jack could breathe underwater, but what about Godzilla? It can't be that His Majesty himself is wearing a leather suit and doing something tricky, right? Newgate glanced at Karakshu, who was looking east and west, and thought that it would be okay for His Majesty to let Karakshu pretend to be Godzilla from a distance. At least he had a tail, and he couldn't be distinguished from a distance. Time passed slowly, and soon half an hour passed. Small-scale commotions and discussions began to appear in the crowd. Many people began to worry. Did His Majesty pretend too much? Did he really think that he had a mythical item like the heart of the ocean and drowned in the sea? They sincerely acknowledged Jack's rule and believed that Jack was a perfect and beloved king. But they also really didn't believe that Jack could breathe in the water and summon the mythical giant Godzilla. That's right, this is what most people think about this sacrifice. They don't believe that Jack can breathe underwater and summon Godzilla. In their opinion, although the story of the sea god opening the sky is wonderful, it is just a myth after all. Whether it is the children of the forest, the ancestors, the Andals or the GIs, they all have their own myths and legends. For example, the harpy believed by the GIs people. No one has ever seen a live harpy. Just when Newgate was daydreaming, Karaku suddenly roared, and then flew into the air very anxiously, and kept roaring. Everyone was startled by Karaku's sudden irritability. They didn't know if it was their illusion, but they actually heard fear from Karaku's roar. A dull roar came, and the sense of antiquity came to the face, making people unable to help but feel fear. Hiss. Karaku let out a terrified cry. For the first time, it felt deadly danger and fear. Chapter 87. The water is not just for fish. Poseidon, your majesty is drifting on the sea. Newgate stared blankly at the sea in the distance. Jack was standing on the sea. His legs were not moving, but he rushed to the shore at an astonishing speed. The people in front of the temple of Poseidon were stunned. They didn't expect Jack to appear in this way. Is the legend true? This is what everyone thinks in their minds, and Newgate is no exception. He has thought of all the possible scenarios of Jack, but he didn't expect it to be like this. In just a dozen seconds, Jack approached the coastline, and then Jack sank into the water. Poseidon under Jack's feet swam quickly towards the coastline. When approaching the coast, Poseidon switched his posture from swimming to walking. With a click, Newgate knelt on the ground, not because of faith, but because of fear. Poseidon, what did he see? A monster of more than 10 meters walked out of the sea step by step. Oh no, it's not a monster, it's the mythical sea god. The giant beast that opened the sky, Godzilla. Lizard-like appearance, ferocious dorsal fin, thick and long tail. These features all indicate the identity of a giant beast. Of course, although Poseidon grows very fast, it is impossible for him to be more than 10 meters tall. Now Poseidon is only 7 meters tall when standing upright. In Newgate's eyes, he is more than 10 meters tall, purely because Newgate himself was scared and stupid. It's just a psychological effect. Poseidon roared again, and then the azure atomic breath rushed into the sky. The blue light column from the sky lasted for 3 seconds, and everyone was scared to the ground. If they were still worried about whether Jack was drowned just now they have no ability to think at all. They only have one thought in their hearts at this time, that is, the myth is true. After listening to the legend of the sea god opening the sky, they never dreamed that they would see the sea god in the myth one day. Poseidon slowly walked to the offerings placed under the altar, and after sweeping all the offerings in big mouthfuls, he turned and dived into the galaxy. However, after Poseidon left, it took Jack several minutes to come out of the sea. At this time, everyone was still kneeling on the ground in fear, and Jack was watching this scene with some astonishment. It seemed that the shock brought to them by today's play was far beyond his imagination. But think about it, if Pangu really appeared in front of him one day, he might be shocked and at a loss. Get up, no need to kneel. The sea god has accepted our sacrifice and will help us kill the sea monster. The sacrifice is officially over. In order to celebrate the completion of the sacrifice ceremony, everyone will not have to work in the next 7 days, but the salary will be paid as usual. The imagined cheers did not come, and everyone helped each other to get up, obviously not recovered from the shock just now. At this time, Karaku flew down from the sky and rushed to Jack's side, constantly sniffing, as if wondering why his father was riding a sea monster. Jack patted Karaku's head, comforted Karaku's mood, and asked Newgate to bring his trident of the Sea King. The trident was made of ordinary iron. Jack was going to smelt a Valyrian steel sword, but time was very urgent, and it had not been forged yet. After taking the trident, Jack told Newgate to do the follow-up work, and then he jumped into the galaxy. Seeing this, Newgate immediately put his mood in order, and began to evacuate everyone. Those with weak legs were helped by those with strong legs to leave first. In short, they could not stay in front of the temple of Poseidon. After Jack jumped into the water, Poseidon immediately came up and licked Jack's cheek. Poseidon was very excited. He hadn't seen Jack for a long time, so he naturally missed him very much. Jack also rubbed Poseidon's big head twice, then grabbed Poseidon's dorsal fin and controlled it to swim in the direction of the Sky Lake. There is no natural tributary in the galaxy, so Jack is not worried about getting lost. He just walks along the direction of the water flow. Poseidon's speed is very fast, and it didn't take long to reach the Sky Lake. The vision on both sides suddenly widened. The Milky Way was like a rope, and the Sky Lake was not in the middle of the rope. The widest part was 2,000 or 3,000 meters. Jack didn't know how deep it was. Poseidon took Jack to dive continuously, and Jack held the trident tightly in his hand. He didn't know what the sea monster looked like, but the sea monster must have no natural enemies in the Sky Lake. As long as Poseidon restrained his breath, Jack on its back would be the best bait. After diving about 30 meters, he reached the bottom of the lake. The water of the Sky Lake was very clear, and a large number of fish swam around at the bottom of the water. But Jack soon found something wrong. There was no big fish among these fish. All of them were small fish of 20 to 30 centimeters, which was very abnormal for the huge Milky Way. It seems that all the big fish were eaten by that monster. What on earth is it? Could it be a group? Jack was a little curious. If there was only one monster, how much it would have to eat all the big fish in the Milky Way? Just as Jack was thinking, Poseidon suddenly turned around, and a hideous monster was rushing towards Jack. Poseidon roared and rushed forward. As the titan beast released its momentum, the monster's sprint speed slowed down. But the monster had no time to think, because Godzilla had already rushed over. Godzilla was 12 meters long, including its tail, and looked much bigger than the monster in the water. Jack looked carefully at the water monster beaten by Godzilla. Its weird appearance made Jack seem to see a living fossil in evolution. Because the monster's front and back limbs were too obvious, it was like a creature that had not yet evolved from living on land to living in water. Jack guessed that this creature should have been a reptile living on the island before, but had to enter the water to survive for various reasons. So the monster's limbs evolved from claws to the shape of paddles. Otherwise the forelimbs would not be like duck feet and the hind limbs would not be like the limbs of a turtle. Just when Jack was stunned, the monster suddenly exerted force, and at the cost of having its hind limbs torn off, it broke free from Poseidon's entanglement. But the monster did not run away, but rushed directly towards Jack. Jack raised his eyebrows when he saw this scene. What a smart guy, he even knew to attack him. Jack was not afraid at all. He raised his trident and rushed towards the monster. The water was not only the home of fish, but also his home. Seeing that Jack did not run away, the monster's eyes showed human surprise and his speed increased. When the distance between the two sides was less than 3 meters, Jack threw the trident with force, but the monster opened its mouth and stabbed Jack with its tongue like a sword. The trident hit the monster's shoulder, and the monster's tongue also pierced Jack's shoulder. The monster let out a violent hiss and suddenly retracted its tongue. A hole with a diameter of about 5 centimeters was pierced on Jack's shoulder, and the blood instantly dyed the lake around Jack red. The monster was about to pull out the trident on his shoulder with his mouth, but Jack suddenly rushed in front of him, and the wound on his shoulder had already healed. The monster widened his eyes, and was not sure who was the water monster for a while. At this time, Poseidon also rushed over, and grabbed the monster's back with two short hands. The slime on the monster's body had no effect, and Poseidon's claws pierced the monster's flesh fiercely. Without giving the monster a chance to continue struggling, the dorsal fin behind Poseidon lit up blue light, and a breath of atomic breath melted the monster's head. Chapter 88 Winter is Coming, New Gate. Jack used a harpoon, no, it should be said that he used a trident, to carry the monster's body to the shore. The Cheyenne Lake in the center of the galaxy has a good geographical location, so 2 docks were built. After dragging the monster's body ashore, Jack pulled out the trident, and at this time Newgate and others also rode over. Hiss, Karakshu roared excitedly. Karakshu is a dragon that remembers grudges very much. He was almost dragged into the water by this monster at the beginning. How can he not be excited now that his revenge has been taken? Jack reached out and grabbed a handful of mucus on the monster's body. The reason why he used the trident to drag the monster ashore just now was because of this mucus. The mucus on the monster's body is very silky, like lubricating oil. Jack has asked Poseidon to search underwater to see if the monster has laid eggs or cubs. Either kill them all, or see if they are worth raising. Just when Newgate was about to touch the mucus, Karakshu directly sprayed out dragon flames, wanting to eat the monster. The moment the dragon flame touched the monster, it was like igniting fuel, and a huge wave of fire rose instantly. The huge wave of fire that suddenly rose startled everyone, and even the fool Karakshu was startled. When he first ignited the monster escaped into the water, and he didn't expect the monster to be so flammable. Looking at the burning body of the monster, Jack was a little stunned. No, what kind of creature can be so flammable? Seeing this, Newgate hurriedly called for people to put out the fire. The fire was a bit big, and the monster's 6-meter long body was all burned, like a 6-meter wide and 5-meter high wall of fire. Wait, don't put out the fire first, see how long it can burn. Jack stopped the people who were about to put out the fire. Fortunately, the Sea King Palace also implemented a palace ban, otherwise such a huge wall of fire would definitely attract a large group of spectators. However, the monster burned for much longer than Jack imagined. After a full hour, the monster was still burning. Jack's expression changed from surprise to awakening, and from awakening to astonishment, and finally only numbness remained, staring blankly at the burning of the monster's body. Another hour passed, and the burning of the monster's body still did not stop. At this time, Poseidon's roar came from the side of the dock. The moment they heard the sound, Newgate and others knelt down again. Jack didn't say much when he saw this. He could understand Poseidon's roar. He found the offspring of the monster, but there was a little accident. After Jack came to the side of the dock, he saw a dense layer of tadpoles swimming around Poseidon, each of which was about 5 centimeters. It turned out that just now, Poseidon found the monster's nest. After entering it, the dense eggs just broke the shells. Countless monster cubs instinctively regarded Poseidon as a mother beast. Jack looked at this layer of black tadpoles in surprise. There were at least thousands of them. Jack picked up a monster cub and looked at it carefully and found that there was differentiation among these monster cubs. A small part has completely become aquatic creatures, and the forelimbs have no webbed feet, but have become paddle-shaped like the hind limbs. But most of them still inherited the characteristics of the mother, with webbed feet on the forelimbs. Perhaps if Jack hadn't interfered, the few monsters with paddle-shaped limbs would continue to survive, and they would become smaller and smaller due to the shortage of food. The remaining majority would be eliminated because they were too slow. In the end, only the monsters with paddle-shaped limbs survived, and they completely lost the characteristics of amphibians and reptiles, and turned into completely aquatic creatures. Jack didn't expect that the history of biological evolution that could only be seen in books would appear in front of him. Then Jack asked Poseidon to take care of the children first, and he planned to dig a large reservoir to raise this kind of monster. As we all know, the essence of industrial base is to boil water, and boiling water requires fuel. Look at the corpse behind you, that is still burning with a raging fire. Isn't this a living coal mine? Maybe this thing is not important now, but what if the long night comes? The long night of the world of ice and fire will plunge the whole world into darkness for several years. In such a dark situation, how can this burning water monster still be a monster? It is simply Jack's little sweetie, a sweetheart. Godzilla was somewhat resistant. Taking care of a baby was the most annoying thing. But Jack deceived him. Poseidon, you are the last Godzilla in the world. You have to take on the responsibility of continuing the race. Sooner or later, you will have to take care of a baby. Practice first. Anyway, it's not your baby, so it doesn't matter if it dies. The original Godzilla was only 110 meters tall, but Poseidon was modified by the system to adapt to the high magic plane, and some genetic modifications were performed. Poseidon is 200 meters tall when he grows up. As a titan beast, his lifespan is about 10,000 years, and it only takes him 20 years to become an adult. Before adulthood, he is male, and after adulthood, he becomes female. After adulthood, Poseidon can decide for himself whether to start reproducing offspring. During the period from childhood to adulthood, he is hermaphroditic and will nurture an embryo in his body. If there is no desire to give birth, Poseidon will suppress the development of the embryo so that the embryo will not change for hundreds of years. But if she wants to give birth, she will stimulate the embryo and give it enough nutrition, which generally requires a gestation period of 90 years. There will be 1 to 2 Godzilla babies born in one litter, but there is only one chance to give birth in a lifetime. Because after giving birth, Godzilla will completely become a female and lose the ability to give birth. It is precisely because of this that Jack does not have high requirements for Karakshu, as long as he is obedient. It is like Jack gave birth to a pair of children. The eldest daughter is obedient and good at studying. She has a long life and can protect the family for a long time. The second son does not matter as long as he does not commit crimes. Jack held up Poseidon's big head and kissed him hard. Dad loves you the most. Good boy. Be obedient, okay? Poseidon's tail suddenly swung happily, indicating that this matter was left to him. Then Poseidon dived into the bottom of the lake and began to hunt. He had to prepare the first lunch for these little guys. Jack licked his lips. Poseidon stayed in the sea for a long time, and his skin tasted salty. After Poseidon left, Jack returned to the monster mother. New gate. Arrange for someone to watch it. I want to know the exact burning time. Also, mobilize people immediately to build another reservoir along the Cheyenne Lake. Remember to build a dam with cement to raise this monster. We will call it oilfish in the future. Oilfish? Why is it called oilfish? I remember you said in Minecraft that oil is a very precious resource. Newgate was a little curious. Why is this strange monster called oilfish? Why not burning fish or BBQ fish? Because its strategic value is the same as oil. Winter is coming, Newgate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89 The Benevolent Prime Minister. Newgate was stunned by this sentence, but he reacted immediately. Winter is coming, Your Majesty. If we really succeed in raising them, the darkness of winter will be driven away by you. Newgate looked at Jack with admiration. He had not thought of this just now. This long summer lasted so long, so what awaits the world will be a long night that will last at least a whole generation. Even if the temperature in Essos is a little higher, it is relative to Westeros. Every time there is a long night, the world's population will drop by half, and this time it will probably be good if 1/3 can survive. Especially slaves. Every long night will take away 90% of the slaves. They are like livestock, and after death they will be mixed into feed by slave owners to feed some omnivorous animals. Thinking of this, Newgate felt compassion again, but he was no longer a slave. He was the Prime Minister of Atlantis, and he had to consider the people of Atlantis first. But he was still prepared to do something within his ability, such as arranging for the Chamber of Commerce to increase the pace of purchasing slaves. Now Atlantis lacks labor. He still has this power. In Atlantis, as long as you work, you can get paid, and you can even have a chance to rest with pay. Newgate doesn't think that people in Atlantis will freeze to death or starve to death after the long night comes. It just so happens that he is going to make a wave of $0 purchases next, and all the merchant ships purchased with $0 will be put into slave transportation. Now, relying on the transportation model proposed by Jack, 5,000 people can be absorbed every 2 months. After the $0 purchase, the efficiency must be at least doubled. Thinking of this, Newgate said to Jack, "Your Majesty, I have something to tell you." You are hesitant. Just say it directly. It's about the population. I think 100,000 people are a bit too few. Can we absorb more? Newgate expressed his thoughts. Jack smiled slightly. Why, do the slaves who are about to die in the long night arouse your sympathy? Newgate's lips moved a few times, as if he wanted to find some excuses, but he didn't know why he gave up and finally chose to remain silent. It seems that this is the case. Your Majesty, Newgate didn't know how to start, but Jack chuckled and said, "I'm not a kind king. Everything I do is for myself. But I have a kind prime minister. The slaves should be glad that they have won your sympathy. They should also be glad that there is an old man among them who really cares about them." Jack looked at Newgate and whispered, "From now on, Atlantis will no longer limit the number of people it absorbs until the long night comes." Newgate was very surprised and immediately knelt down in front of Jack. "Your Majesty, what they should be most grateful for is that they met you before the long night." Jack waved his hand and signaled Newgate to quickly arrange for people to build a reservoir. Looking at Newgate's excited back, Jack felt a little emotional. He had to admit that there are always a group of kind-hearted people in the world. They are real saints, not saint bitches. For example, Newgate, even more than 50 years of slavery could not erase the integrity and kindness in his heart. With his power as prime minister, he could raise the planned population limit even without reporting to Jack, because Jack's order at the time was an estimated 100,000 people, depending on the situation. But Newgate still chose to report to him. He was too upright and kind, but he lacked a bit of the smoothness. When he first met him, he had a bit of Eddard Stark's flavor. This was not a good thing. If he met Joffrey, the Emperor of all ages, he would probably not last more than a month, and his head would be stuck on a spear for public display. In comparison, Jack seemed a little bad. Everything he did was to build a powerful empire and then enjoy the pleasure brought by power. But Jack did not regret it, let alone blame himself. People are different. He likes his current life and the pleasure brought by power. Carracks, let's go. I'll take you to eat barbecue when I go back. Hiss. August 16, 301 AC. At this time, Daenerys, who was far away in Meereen, received the letter from Jack. The letter said that Jack was in a mess because of the water monster that appeared on the island, and Carracks was also seriously injured by the water monster's sneak attack, so Jack could not come back. After reading the letter, Dany was a little worried and immediately wrote a letter to ask Jack if he needed help and let the strongest dragon try. After writing the letter, she gave it to the maid beside her and asked her to release the raven immediately. After the maid left, Dany suddenly felt nauseous and had dry burps. Miss Andoy immediately handed her warm milk, and Dany drank several sips before she recovered. "Your Majesty, are you okay? Or should we find a doctor to see you?" Since yesterday, Dany has been nauseous and had dry burps from time to time, but it is not frequent, and there is no obvious discomfort, so Dany did not care. Dany waved her hand lightly. "No, maybe I ate something the day before yesterday, and my stomach is uncomfortable. It will be fine in 2 days." Miss Andoy was still a little worried. After all, Dany had never had a stomachache before, and she didn't eat anything strange the day before yesterday, so how could her stomach be uncomfortable? But Dany said it was okay, so Miss Andoy didn't say anything more. The maid who was arranged by Dany to release the raven came to the corner of the pyramid and then secretly opened the envelope. After seeing the content above, she was surprised, but she quickly put the note back and walked towards the raven cage, as if nothing had happened. However, her behavior fell into the eyes of another maid. The maid who saw all this slowly left, as if she had never appeared. As expected, the news that Prime Minister Jack Poseidon could not come back because of the serious injury of the young dragon was known to everyone that night. However, Thanks to Dana's recent strong presence, there was no unrest in Meereen after she personally spoke to comfort them. The silver moon was high in the sky and the garden at the top of the pyramid. Dany stroked Drogon's head while looking down at the whole Meereen. It seems that Meereen is not inseparable from Jack, and it's the same with me. Dany's purple eyes were as beautiful as purple gems under the moonlight. The emotion of missing made Dany feel more melancholy, just like an ordinary girl missing her sweetheart. Without Jack around, I'm really a little uncomfortable. What should I do if I miss him a little bit? Dany murmured to herself. Drogon sensed that his mother was unhappy and gently licked Dany's delicate cheek with his tongue. Dany smiled after feeling the comfort from Drogon and gently pushed Drogon away. Little Drogon, your tongue has barbs, it hurts a little. Feeling that his mother's mood had returned to normal, Drogon also gently rubbed Dany. Not far away, Viserion and Rhaegal looked at the big brother who was close to Dany curiously. They couldn't understand why the big brother suddenly became so close to their mother. He even stayed with their mother most of the time and didn't compete with them for food. They couldn't figure it out, so they gave up thinking about it. Anyway, it had nothing to do with them. Drogon didn't compete with them for food, and they were so happy. Chapter 90. As long as His Majesty the Sea King is still alive. Mancho also received the news from the servants. He was not sad about this matter, but happier than anyone else. As for Jack's dragon being injured, he didn't believe a word of it. He dared to guarantee with his life that Jack was definitely preparing to develop his own power for some reason. HMPH, the excuse is quite plausible. A sea monster attacked a dragon, and the dragon was seriously injured? Hearing his father's cold snort, Ivan asked in confusion, "Father, do you think this news is false? Will Jack Poseidon come back?" "No, Jack Poseidon will not come back. This is true." "What do you mean?" "Dragon. His dragon is the same as Her Majesty's dragon. They are all super weapons, and they will be able to sweep everything in less than 10 years, and he only has one dragon. Do you think he will let his dragon take risks?" Mando smiled confidently, "Unless he has a weapon more powerful than a dragon, but that is impossible, so his dragon must not be injured, but he just doesn't want to come back." Ivan's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, "Then the giant wave merchants he protected before will be at the mercy of others? The sea god brew of the giant wave chamber of commerce is very profitable, and the hot pot restaurant and barbecue restaurant are both money-making tools that are not inferior to the arena. Now if the arena in Meereen wants to open for business, Dany must participate in the shares, in the name of guiding the internal operation." After the giant wave chamber of commerce opened a store in Meereen, countless nobles wanted to get involved thanks to the low price of materials and novel taste. So they opened their own stores. After all, hot pot and barbecue did not have much gold content. As a result, it was closed down by Jack and his men, just after it was renovated and operated for one day, with various reasons. Since then, they have guided the giant wave chamber of commerce to have the largest umbrella in Meereen. The most disgusting thing is that the newly renovated house here was sold to people who joined the Chamber of Commerce. To join the giant wave chamber of commerce, you must not only pay a franchise fee, but also maintain the operation of the store by yourself, and give 30% of the profit to the giant wave chamber of commerce every month. But even so, they still chose to join the Chamber of Commerce, because after joining the Chamber of Commerce, they can get the purchase quota of Poseidon brew from the Chamber of Commerce every month. Poseidon brew has various styles, including red grapes, green grapes, wheat, and various degrees, and the wine is very clear. Under the operation of the Chamber of Commerce, Poseidon brew has become the standard of Meereen nobles, a symbol of status, and a synonym for nobility. So after many people joined the Chamber of Commerce, they operated their hot pot restaurants and barbecue restaurants in a Buddhist way. After all, both types of food and beverage stores make money from the middle and lower classes, and the profit after a month is not as good as the profit they make from selling a bottle of Poseidon's brew. After they joined the Chamber of Commerce, the price of Poseidon's brew was 300 gold dragons, and they were sold to Yunque, Astapor or other free trade cities at several times the price. This kind of excellent quality wine has spread in Essos in just a few months. Many businessmen or nobles know about this wine, and the more it spreads, the more it becomes more and more magical. but the amount of Poseidon's brew is too small, and many people have only heard of it, but have never seen the real thing. A bottle of wine outside is even sold for thousands of gold dragons. The thousands of gold dragons of Poseidon's brew are no longer the value of the wine itself. The gold dragons are not buying Poseidon's brew, but vanity and a sense of superiority. Looking at his son's expression, Mando asked without changing his expression, "What do you think?" Ivan said excitedly, "That must be to force them to sell to us at a lower price, or even directly buy their secret recipe at a low price, so that the production cost will definitely be lower. And their brewery is in Myrene. I heard that their brewery is about to be demolished. I think you can take people to seal up their winery, just like Jack Poseidon sealed up other people's shops." Mando took a deep breath after hearing what his son said. His son is smart, but it's all small cleverness, without any long-term vision. Do you think we can control the big wave merchants without Jack? Do you think the big wave merchants still have any secrets in the brewery in Myrene? Isn't it? Ivan asked doubtfully. Half a month ago, the supply of Poseidon brew of the giant wave chamber of commerce suddenly stopped. They said they would have to wait 3 months to resume supply, and the reason they gave was insufficient raw materials. Ivan was not stupid and said uncertainly, "You mean that the brewery was ready to be demolished long before Jack left, and now the supply of Poseidon brew is cut off because they have already demolished it?" Mancho nodded and continued, "I suspect Jack is the giant wave chamber of commerce, that is, the master behind the mysterious Atlantis. Wait and see, someone will definitely be unlucky next. We are ready to make preparations, so that it will be convenient to add fuel to the fire, and add insult to injury." At the giant wave chamber of commerce station, Dono and Marty were sorting out the list on hand, and some of them said they wanted to withdraw from the chamber of commerce. They followed the method given by Jack and successfully promoted Poseidon brew as a circulating luxury product. But the development of things obviously exceeded their expectations. A bottle of 500 milliliters of Poseidon brew could actually be sold at a high price of 300 gold dragons, which was just like a dream. Even with all these people rushing to buy it, the 1,000 bottles of Poseidon brew every month were snapped up at the beginning of the month. How did His Majesty come up with this idea? It's so sinister and far-sighted. Dono changed his words in time. He wanted to say it was sinister and vicious, but that was not the right thing to say. When they joined, Jack proposed to sign a contract. The contract was very thick, and many nobles did not read the fine print carefully. The contract stipulates that anyone who joins and breaches the contract before the deadline must pay a penalty of 100,000 gold dragons. If there is not so much money, real estate can be used to repay the debt. And when Jack left, he explained that the brewery on Crescent Island had been built almost. Let them demolish the brewery here immediately, smash all the distilling machines and throw them into the sea. It is precisely because of this that the supply of Poseidon brew will continue for at least 3 or 4 months. Dono originally thought that the supply would be restored after a period of time, and it would be sold as usual. But just a few days ago, Marty suddenly received a Raven message from Poseidon Island. The main content was to let them pay attention to the changes that will happen next, and someone will definitely be interested in the brewery. Those messy members in the Chamber of Commerce will definitely unite to force the price of Poseidon brew to drop, and then they will directly take out the contract to bite hard. Marty chuckled. These people don't know the relationship between His Majesty the Sea King and the Chamber of Commerce. They think that they can negotiate with us after His Majesty the Sea King leaves. How naive. After they wrestle the Poseidon brew, the price is several times higher. Why are they still thinking of suppressing our price? I don't understand. Chapter 91. Myrene can't turn the world around. Because they want more. Marty sneered. Do you think they want to lower the price of Poseidon brew? They want the formula of Poseidon brew. There is no doubt that Marty has a more thorough understanding of human nature, while Dono is a little worse in comparison. It is also because of this that Jack made Marty the speaker and branch president of the Chamber of Commerce in Myrene, and Dono became Marty's secretary and assistant. Marty continued, they want to withdraw from the Chamber of Commerce, just to ask me to retain them, and then ask me for the formula of Poseidon brew. If I'm weak, they will hold on to the formula. If I'm tough, they will compromise and ask me to lower the price. Marty even figured out their thoughts, and there were only 2 tricks back and forth. But they miscalculated one thing: the gap between Poseidon Brew and other wines was too big. Even if they united to boycott Poseidon Brew, there would still be other trading cities that would buy it. The funny thing is that the trial operation of His Majesty the Seeking in Myrene gave them the illusion that Poseidon Brew must be sold in Myrene. Then what should we do? Lower the price? Or stop selling in Myrene? Dono asked. Marty sneered. Of course we have to sell in Myrene. It's not like we can't sell without them. We can cooperate with Her Majesty the Queen. She is worried that Myrene has no industry to replace the slave trade, to attract merchants from outside, and since they want to withdraw, we have an excuse to confiscate all their merchant ships and wealth. If it were a big noble, it would be fine, but many Myrene merchants who joined the Chamber of Commerce are worth less than 100,000 gold dragons. As long as they dare to withdraw, Marty can force them to pay the penalty for breach of contract. If they don't have money, they can use their assets to offset it. In the list of people they just sorted out, there are 7 merchants, 5 small nobles, 1 neutral great lord, and 2 conservative great lords. A total of 15 forces proposed to withdraw from the Chamber of Commerce. You must know that there are only 20 members of the Chamber of Commerce. At the same time, this is also their confidence. Dono was a little worried. Will they pay the money obediently? I always feel that they will refuse to pay the penalty under the leadership of the Great Lord. Marty said arrogantly. Dono, this is your bad point. You worry too much and look ahead and behind when doing things. What are you afraid of? I tell you the truth. His Majesty the Seeking is expecting the Great Lord and others to take the lead in the resistance, and the same is true for Daenerys. Then Marty patted Dono on the shoulder and said confidently, as long as His Majesty the Seeking is alive, Myrene will not be able to turn the world upside down. Dono was relieved a lot after hearing this, so he said to Marty, let's go, let's have a drink. Jack had long anticipated that there would be such a day, so he asked Dono and Marty to dismantle the distillation device in advance. The Winnemucca has also boarded the ship to the Seeking Island. No matter how the undercurrents in Myrene are surging, the development of the Seeking Island has really entered its peak period. Jack, who has been the Prime Minister in Myrene for a period of time, has become more and more adept at handling government affairs. Therefore, the 30,000 people on the entire Seeking Island began to operate rapidly. In the Seeking Palace, Jack was lying on a bed. Vitelli sat on him and massaged him, and 2 beautiful maids delivered the tender and soft fruit flesh to his mouth. Newgate reported to him, Your Majesty, the pool you requested has been built, with a diameter of 50 meters. Jack didn't know whether the oilfish lived in groups or alone, and he was not sure when the oilfish would leave the mother beast to live alone. So he asked Newgate to dig a pool with a diameter of 50 meters and a depth of 5 meters to lock up the young oilfish first. The importance of oilfish is too high. The mother oilfish burned for 3 days and 3 nights before it turned into ashes. Moreover, the mother beast can lay thousands of eggs at a time, which is much more convenient than coal when facing a long night. Jack has done experiments, and the substance that really burns is the mucus secreted by the monster's body surface. This mucus will be secreted when the monster breaks its shell. In other words, if the mucus can be preserved for a long time, it will be quite amazing. But the result was a pity. The mucus peeled off from the monster was like sticky snot at first, but it would harden rapidly as soon as it left the body of the oilfish. The hardened mucus was as hard as stone and could no longer burn. Jack was experimenting to see if he could convert the mucus solid into liquid. If this could be achieved, it would really achieve fuel freedom. It would be useless to store it in water or oil. There might be other ways to store it. But with the current situation in Atlantis, it was impossible to study it, so the plan to store mucus alone could only be temporarily abandoned. I will take the time to drive all the oilfish in the lake into the pool tonight. How about the tribute plan? The tribute plan is a beautified term. The essence of this plan is a bloody and violent capital accumulation. Jack plans to send 3,000 Unsullied to dress up as pirates. War is about to break out in Slavers Bay, and a large number of merchant ships are preparing to go to Slavers Bay to make war money. Whether it is a naval war or an army war, merchants accompanying the army are very common in the world of ice and fire. What's more, the slave owners' siege of Meereen will be a protracted war. Meereen, which has the Unsullied guarding the city, cannot be broken overnight. This gave merchants an opportunity to make money, and many merchants even began to sell their property to buy food, livestock, and alcohol, waiting for the war to come and make a fortune. Jack also saw the business opportunity. Merchants made money from the war, and Atlantis made money from the merchants, but Jack was buying for 0 yuan. Jack also gave this action a nice name. Isn't buying for 0 yuan just like other people paying tribute? It's called the tribute plan. I'm teaching them navigation knowledge. They are learning very seriously and quickly. In 3 days, they will be able to follow the caravan to Bravos. Jack waved his hand. Just arrange a few hundred people to follow the caravan to Bravos. It will be too late to wait for the 39 large warships to come back. It will take at least half a year to get from here to Bravos. You ask Crutcher to free up the 41 small merchant ships, and I will give him 12 giant merchant ships to replace the 41 small ships. Newgate's eyes lit up. Atlantis now has a total of 260 ships, 37 more medium-sized ships than the previous 223. Among these 260 ships, 39 large merchant ships were sent to Bravos to be transformed into large warships, and the rest were 13 giant ships including the Sea King, 167 medium-sized ships, and 41 small ships. Sea King Island currently prohibits private sea voyages for business, and no businessman knows the location of the Seychelles. Therefore, except for the 39 large ships under renovation, all other ships are under the management of the Chamber of Commerce and go out to sea day and night to buy various materials. Among them, the most imported are slaves, food, and iron ore. Atlantis currently has only 30,000 people, and at least 100,000 people are needed to have a sufficient fertility base. Moreover, when Atlantis purchased slaves, the ratio of men to women has always been 4:6, and women are the main force of fertility. For this reason, Jack has also specially formulated some policies to stimulate men and women to get married and have children. Chapter 90 to land and house. For example, you can enjoy 90 days of paid leave during pregnancy, and you can receive childcare subsidies before your baby is 3 years old. These are all methods that Jack imitated in his previous life to save the fertility rate. In particular, newborns will have the opportunity to go to school, and the first 3 years will be free of tuition. As for where Jack got so much money, it's very simple. Just plunder the wealth of other forces. The essence of foreign war is to strengthen yourself, and then continue to plunder with a stronger attitude. It can be said that in the eyes of women in Atlantis, having a baby is like laying a golden egg. As long as you have a baby, the country will give you money. In the Middle Ages, having a baby was a must for women, and children were the guarantee of labor and retirement. The money issued by the empire was all because of the kindness of the Sea King. For their sake, Jack's policy also successfully set off a wave of baby making in the Sea King Island. Even many men and women used the empire's money for having children, and they didn't even know each other. They just got married on the spot after a simple contact, and fell in love. This situation made Jack think of the blind date in his previous life. The two parties didn't know each other, but got married in a hurry, just because their families urged them to get married. The final result is that the married life is a mess. It's okay if there are children, but basically divorced if there are no children. In his previous life, Jack was a queen, and witnessed the process of the Celestial Empire from a large population to negative population growth. At that time, Jack thought this situation was good for an individual. At least the fewer people, the more valuable. But now Jack has become a leader, an emperor, and a modern man who understands the 5,000-year history of his motherland. He is very clear about the benefits of the demographic dividend, so he has intervened in population development since the founding of Atlantis. He wants Atlantis to have a demographic dividend, at least to maintain the explosive growth trend of the population before entering modern society. But Jack is not in a hurry. Even with Jack's own intervention, it will take 100 or 200 years to cross from the Middle Ages to modern society. Such a long time is enough for Jack to start with the thoughts of the Atlanteans. Newgate didn't know what Jack was thinking in his mind, He only knew that Atlantis could absorb more slaves next. With 12 giant ships, thousands more people can be transported without interfering with Atlantis' strategic food storage. A giant ship can carry at least 1,000 people if it follows the normal slave transportation method, but the cabin may be crowded. By the way, Newgate, since the factory on Crescent Island has started, how is the transportation solved? Your Majesty, the distance between the islands is only half an hour away. According to your suggestion, a small community. Yes, it is a community, but our manpower is limited. At present, only one finished community has been built, with only 30 houses. According to the craftsman, they inserted a kind of thing developed by blacksmiths into the cement. What is it called? What is it called? Alloy steel. Yes, it is alloy steel. I'm really sorry, Your Majesty, I'm old and my memory is really not very good. Newgate said awkwardly. Jack waved his hand and asked the maid to bring a bench to Newgate. Sitting down and talking, when you are old, you are still strong at over 50. Jack was right. In the world of Game of Thrones, even in the long summer, the average age of the world's population is only between 30 and 35 years old. As for the long night, well, the average age cannot be counted. Because even some proletarian knights or small nobles with poor territories may be frozen or starved to death. When the long night comes, Essos is in a better situation than Westeros. At least Essos will not have snow all year round. But Westeros is different, especially the north. With a population of about 2 million in the north, it is good if 1/3 of them can survive a long night. They inserted this corrosion-resistant alloy steel into the cement according to the idea you provided. Therefore, our community can be built to 5 floors, and each floor is a standard house with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, 84 square meters. In fact, it can be built higher. The people in the world of Game of Thrones are still very skilled in building houses. The castles of the nobles and the pyramids of the slave owners all demonstrate the extraordinary skills of the craftsmen. Especially the big pyramid occupied by Daenerys, which is 200 meters high. But Jack wanted low cost efficiency, so the 5-story community became the best choice. Not only is it not as complicated to build as pyramids and castles, it also allows 30 families to live on the land that was originally only suitable for 6 families. The utilization rate has increased 5-fold. How great. Jack is a good person. He did not even come up with a common area system, and each family has a standard 84 square meter 2-bedroom and 1 living room. You will arrange for someone to announce that Crescent Island has built the first happy home community. Currently, there are only 30 houses, and it is first come first served. At the same time, the glass factory, brewery, soap factory, fertilizer factory, iron smelting factory, and clothing factory have begun to recruit workers. The average monthly salary is 6,000 copper coins, 5 days off, married people are given priority, and those with children are given priority. The factory will also provide additional childcare subsidies and other welfare policies. Newgate was a little surprised when he heard this. Your Majesty, is this too high? The average monthly salary of 6,000 is too high. Just give 600 a month. An average of 600 copper coins a month, with no rest time. This is the current treatment of most people who cut wood, collect stones, and reclaim wasteland. But even so, Newgate felt that the treatment was too good. In his opinion, being able to arrange 3 meals a day for them, and having 300 copper coins a month was already a gift from Jack. After all, the 3 meals a day that Jack arranged for this group of people included mincemeat and big bones. Even if there is not much meat and big bones, there is meat to eat every day, which is the greatest ideal of every slave. Jack didn't know what Newgate thought. If he knew, he would definitely sigh. You are kind, but not much. In fact, in Newgate's view, food, 3 meals a day, and 10 copper coins a day, this is simply a life that slaves dare not dream of. But in Jack's view, it is far from enough. If the salary is not higher, how to stimulate consumption? How to sell houses? One difference between Atlantis and other forces is that in terms of land system, the land belongs to the empire and the people have the right to use it. The land for housing naturally has a use period of only 80 years and can be transferred to other people. After the expiration, the empire will not take back the property, but will renew it for free. However, the procedures for the land use certificate and the property certificate will not be changed, that is, the time will not be re-registered and updated. In this case, if you want Atlantis citizens to buy houses, you have to do two things at the same time. New gate, add one more rule to the law. No citizen of Atlantis is allowed to build his own house. All housing is built by the state in a community. Private land sales are strictly prohibited. All land transactions must be registered with the government. Finally, if you want to work in the factory on Crescent Island, you must buy a house. The original price of the house is 500 gold dragons. I will only sell it for 50 gold dragons now, which is considered a job offer for them. Newgate asked hesitantly, well, your majesty, even if it is 50 gold dragons, they may not be able to afford it. Most people now live in temporary residences. Newgate had previously asked Jack why he didn't build a house first. At that time, Jack's reply to him was to wait, and he would make his own arrangements. Chapter 93 The difference between starting from scratch and occupation. Newgate didn't expect that Jack was going to make money by selling houses in the community, but a house cost 50 gold dragons, which was indeed a lot of money. At this time, Newgate suddenly thought of an order Jack had given before. That is, all the land in the Atlantis Empire belongs to the state, and citizens only have the right to use it. And the citizens of Atlantis didn't care about this order, because all the land was reclaimed by Jack. Jack paid and provided food. No matter what, these lands belonged to Jack, and they didn't think too much. After all, the king still had to find people to plant the reclaimed land, and the reclaimed land had already begun to hire people to cultivate. You only need to complete the not so complicated planting test and get a planting certificate to become a cultivator. It is said that the work of a cultivator is very easy. Moreover, the cultivator not only provides 3 meals a day, but also has a salary of 5,000 copper coins a month. Isn't this much more comfortable than farming by yourself? The only pity is that the number of cultivators recruited is a bit small. So now the Atlanteans are not obsessed with the ownership of the land. According to the reclamation plan of the Seeking Island, they all have the opportunity to become cultivators. Therefore, they thought that, even if they didn't have land to grow food, they would not lack food, let alone money. Moreover, it was no secret that a large number of factories were built on Crescent Island. They even speculated that the treatment in the factories might be better. It's okay. We will set up an imperial bank and lend them money, interest-free loans. In this way, even if they only deposit 0.5 gold dragons per month, it will be 6 gold dragons a year. If it is an interest-free loan, it will be repaid in less than 10 years. Newgate keenly noticed that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Your Majesty, why do you have to control their housing? Newgate was a little puzzled. Why did the citizens of the empire only enjoy the right to use the land, but were not allowed to build their own houses on the land? Because the population will increase. If they are allowed to build their own houses, the entire Neptune Island will be full of miscellaneous self-built houses. Building communities can not only make reasonable use of land to allow more people to have houses to live in, but also use the money they use to buy houses to build more communities. As for the issue of land ownership you mentioned, only giving them the right to use the land is to prevent land annexation. If the ownership of the land is given to individuals, the rich will find ways to annex other people's land. In the long run, the empire will have less and less land, and individuals will have more and more private land. Until the end, the country can't collect taxes, and some people will be fat and oily. Land is wealth, especially before industrialization. Even if industrialization is entered, land is still valuable. Although the land of Neptune Island is Jack's now, there will be more and more people in the future, and more archipelagos and coastal lands will be occupied. At this time, if the land is still privately owned, the first batch of rich people will definitely not let go of the newly occupied land. In addition, Atlantis will be composed of archipelagos and coastal areas around the world, which is no different from the feudal system. There will be landlords of all sizes who are no different from local emperors everywhere, and Jack's empire built from scratch will have no meaning. So now that Atlantis has just been established, and no nobles have been born, Jack must not implement private ownership of land at this time, when resistance is minimal. This is also one of the reasons why Jack chose to find an archipelago, to build a territory from scratch. If Jack had chosen to occupy a piece of land in Essos or Westeros, it would be basically impossible for Jack to implement these deviant systems, because the nobles would unite to resist Jack. Jack's land system shook the foundation of their rule. In the eyes of the nobles, nationalization is a trick, and Jack's approach is to confiscate their land. Unless Jack asks Poseidon to clean up all the local nobles. Otherwise, Jack would never be as relaxed as he is now, and he would implement whatever system he wants. Newgate also understood Jack's idea. Building a community can indeed provide housing for more people, and make it easier to manage the population. When the time comes, we can directly manage it according to the community, and it will be convenient for population statistics and registration. Yes, it seems that you are not so old, that your brain is rusty. Not bad, you can continue to work for me for a few more years. Hurry up and train a sit-off. That young man is good. Newgate was speechless. It seems that you still want to continue to exploit me. To be honest, Newgate really wants to retire and return home. He has promoted the newcomers who should be promoted and arranged the honest people who should be arranged. Now after retirement, a sit-off can take his place. And he can receive a pension and live in the house allocated by the empire to enjoy his old age. When Vitilia gives birth to another fat boy for him to take care of, his life will be worth it to enjoy the happiness of family. As for the power of the Prime Minister, Newgate really doesn't care. As an old slave, it is the greatest happiness to be saved by the Sea King and enjoy his old age. Let the Game of Thrones be left to the young people. Atlantis is basically a 20-year-old young man. In addition, there is a big power vacancy now, and the struggle is fierce. At night, the moon is dark and the stars are sparse, which seems to indicate that it may rain in the next few days. At this time, Jack's decree had been notified to everyone. The citizens of Atlantis did not protest as Jack imagined, but instead asked when they could get a loan to buy a house. Except for the first 5,000 high-level slaves, the rest of the Sea King Island were ordinary people working hard at the bottom. For them, isn't the interest-free loan a housing subsidy for them? Anyway, they were slaves before, and they could live in a doghouse. Now they can have a house covered with cement. Even if the property rights are only 80 years and cannot be renewed, they will accept it. What's more, it can still be renewed after the expiration. According to the loan policy given by His Majesty the Sea King, 50 golden dragons will be repaid in 20 years. With the average monthly salary promised by His Majesty, there is no pressure at all. Jack was also very satisfied with their reaction. This group of people had not been enlightened, and their lives had just started to improve, so they agreed with Jack's words 100%. In their eyes, Jack was the incarnation of the sea god, and even the living Godzilla obeyed Jack's instructions, and became the patron saint of Atlantis. This blind worship and belief in the sea god will influence the next generation of Atlantis. When they enter the Imperial Academy, they will become a generation with both ideological enlightenment and faith. As the saying goes, the army is divided into 3 levels: ancient army, modern army, and modern army. The division is not judged by the difference in weapons. Like many armies in the Middle East in Jack's previous life, even if they are armed with modern weapons, they are still at the level of ancient armies. The most obvious feature of ancient armies is that they don't know why they fight, and have no desire to fight. They can only improve the combat level of their leaders, and they are armed forces that satisfy the selfish desires of the controllers. In many cases, a 10% casualty will lead to a rout. Modern armies are based on a small number of officers and a large number of consumable soldiers. They know what they are fighting for, and act with this belief. This belief can be animal desire, religious belief or nationalism. Its disadvantage is rigidity and dogmatism. Modern armies have strengthened the basic combat literacy of soldiers on the basis of modern armies. More importantly, they have judgment and unshakable faith. The simplest source of judgment is reading and literacy. But it is usually difficult to have a firm belief after reading and literacy. If an army has judgment and firm belief, its fighting power, initiative and fighting will be unparalleled. The most intuitive manifestation is the arm is flexible fighting, and it is common for them to hold their ground until the last man. Obviously, Jack's goal is to build a modern army. The two conditions of building an empire from scratch and Godzilla have given Jack the foundation for building a modern army. It only takes 20 years for Atlantis' army to be unprecedentedly powerful. Chapter 94 Change of Plan. Jack came to the newly built reservoir, or more precisely, a pond, for raising fish. This scale was far from meeting the requirements of a reservoir. The pond was a circular pond, 50 meters in diameter and 5 meters deep at its deepest point. At this time, the pond had not been filled with water, and there was a soil layer of several meters in diameter in the middle of the place where it connected to the galaxy that had not been dug up. A small dam was built with cement on the inner layer of the soil layer, and there was a fine wire mesh in the middle of the dam. Jack's mind moved, and he entered a state similar to the dragon spirit, except that the connection was not to the dragon but to Gabe. This was enhanced by the original ability of both parties to sense the position, and as time passed, this connection became stronger and stronger. This state was much more stable than the dragon spirit state, and if Jack wanted, he could keep connecting. But he could not share Poseidon's 5 senses, which was similar to installing a radio in Jack and Poseidon's heads. Soon Poseidon sensed Jack's call, and swam towards the pond with thousands of cubs. Soon Poseidon came to the pool. Under Jack's command, he dug up the last layer of soil. Jack also put away the wire mesh in the middle of the dam. A large amount of water poured in, and Poseidon rushed into the pool with all the cubs. Then Jack immediately closed the wire mesh gate, and Poseidon climbed ashore, leaving a group of small fish looking for their mother. Raw finally got rid of them, stupid and greedy. Poseidon complained as soon as he got ashore. Jack took off his clothes and threw them to Vitril, and at the same time, ordered the royal guards kneeling on the ground to wait. Then he jumped directly into the galaxy, and at the same time, called Poseidon to come down quickly, and they went to the river for another walk. Poseidon immediately excitedly swung his tail and immediately rushed in the direction of Jack. Jet, who was lying on the ground, was sweating coldly. When the sea god swung his tail just now, his tail passed over his back. A strong gust of wind swept across his back, and he became the first person to understand the power of the sea. So Jet buried his head deeper, wishing he could lie on the ground to show his sincerity. Jack swam rapidly in the water, and Poseidon followed closely behind him. They played and patrolled the galaxy to see if there were any oil fish left. After the patrol, the two came to the estuary of the galaxy again. After Jack and Poseidon entered the ocean, he felt refreshed. Although he could breathe in both fresh water and seawater, the river was like a stuffy little house, while the ocean was like nature with fresh air. The difference was self-evident. To be honest, Jack regretted building the Poseidon Palace by the Cheyenne Lake. The scenery was good, but it was in the middle of the island. It would be nice if it was built at the estuary. It would be nice to build it at the estuary of the galaxy. Fortunately, he still had the Poseidon, which was a movable palace, and he would have to move to the Poseidon Palace to live in the future. The Poseidon was docked at Pier Number 1. At this time, Gabe Newell was 12 meters long, including his tail, and was no longer as cute as he was when he was just born. The hard and bumpy skin has made him look ferocious. Jack reached out and stroked Gabe's big head. "I will go out to sea again in 2 days. I will have plenty of time to accompany you then." Poseidon licked Jack's cheek with his tongue. Jack smiled and patted his head. "Daddy loves you. I'm going back first. Be careful not to explore too deep waters. This world is not simple. Although the atomic dinosaurs are the absolute overlords in the deep sea, the ice and fire world only shows the tip of the iceberg in the original book. There is almost no information about the deep sea in the other 2 continents." Jack was worried that Poseidon would encounter some monsters if he dived too deep. When he explored the shipwreck, he encountered a giant octopus more than 10 meters long before he reached the deep sea. Poseidon said he knew it and told Jack not to worry. He turned around and swam to the deep sea. Jack looked at Poseidon's back as he dived, and he always felt like an old father who asked his daughter not to go out to play at night, but the daughter went out directly at 9 o'clock. But Jack couldn't just stare at Poseidon all the time, so he simply stopped thinking about it and went ashore from the estuary to the Sea King's palace. Dogs don't walk on the river. Although the water quality is good, Jack doesn't like it. When Jack walked back to the original place, the 9 kings goods and Vitelli were waiting there. Your Majesty, how did you walk back? Vitelli blinked curiously. Jack wiped his wet hair and replied, I don't want to walk on the galaxy waterway. It's too stuffy. Jack looked at the galaxy with some curiosity. If you can breathe in the water, can you really tell whether it's stuffy like the Sea King? Jack didn't say any more nonsense. Go back quickly. I haven't played with Ellie and Yeager for several days. Vitelli curled her lips, and Jen and his 8 kings goods bowed their heads and pretended to be deaf and dumb. Although Jack often looked for prostitutes to play with when he was in Meereen, it was really playing, not playing. Up to now, Jack has only had sex with 4.5 women. Vitril counts as half, and the rest are Ellie, Jagger, Missandei and Daenerys Targaryen. Although Jack has the heart of the ocean, he is still afraid of sexually transmitted diseases, mainly because they are scary. Anyway, it's not like he doesn't have the conditions now, so there's no need to play with prostitutes. He can find any high-end goods he wants. By the way, Jen, does this armor fit you well? Jack asked as he walked. Jerely squeezed out a smile from his dead fish face. The armor you designed is very beautiful. It's hard to imagine how you came up with this style of armor. Jack designed the knight armor specifically for the royal guard. After all, as Jack's personal guard, he must wear it better. Their armor is called whale shark armor. Jack designed it with reference to the armor of the whale shark king. He made some changes to it, so that it has both defensive power and a high enough appearance. However, the cost of a set of armor is 20 gold dragons, which is very expensive, several times that of ordinary armor. An ordinary set of knight armor is only about 2 to 3 gold dragons, and the leather armor worn by infantry is cheaper. Only a dozen silver coins are needed. At present, the army of Atlantis is equipped with leather armor. Jack produces it in a semi-assembly line method, and the cost is controlled at about 9 silver coins. This shows how expensive the whale shark armor on the front guard is. Jack returned to the Sea King Palace and called Newgate. The old man over 50 years old was just about to go to bed when he was called by Jack. Are you ready to rest? No, if you call me half an hour later, I might have to rest. Jack did not pierce Newgate, but said, you prepare and try to let Asidov take over your work within 3 months. In addition, the tribute plan may have to make some changes. Change again? Newgate asked in surprise. The tribute plan has been changed at least 3 times. If it is changed again, it will be the 4th time. Isn't this a hassle? Every time Jack adjusts the plan, he puts forward ideas, and the specific arrangements still have to be made by Newgate. Chapter 95 The Concept of Colony. It seemed that he understood Newgate's look. Fortunately, Jack was thick-skinned. Jack coughed awkwardly and said, I went to see the Unsullied this afternoon. Although they learned a lot from you, they are not professional sailors after all. They can only play their advantages most effectively when they form an army on land. Newgate frowned slightly. So, what do you mean? Leave 1,878 Unsullied to maintain order on the island, and the remaining 5,000 Unsullied will be led by Cato to capture Astapor in Slavers Bay. There are still 500 sailors on the island. Let them drive 30 small ships, disguised as pirates, and plunder merchant ships heading to Slavers Bay. Remember, only medium-sized and large ships are needed. Small ships are not needed. They are not very useful. Jack didn't want the cargo on their ships, but their ships. Newgate keenly discovered the problem. What about you? Jack blinked his purple eyes. Me. Of course I will be commanding in the rear on the Poseidon. Jack said it as a matter of course, and Newgate suddenly realized it. No wonder you let Asidov take over my job within 3 months. You are such a good person. Are you afraid that I will be exhausted? Newgate knew Jack's intention as soon as he heard it. It was nothing more than taking the Sea King to relax. Although Jack really wanted to go out and play, it was also for the convenience of giving orders. This time, he will take action as the Sea King of Atlantis to occupy Astapor in Slave Bay. On the one hand, it is to show off his muscles and let them know that Atlantis is not a soft persimmon and has a strong military force, which will facilitate future business talks. The second is to experiment in Astapor and try how to establish an excellent overseas colony. Jack is very familiar with the word colony, but he has no experience in how to make money from the colony. In addition, this opportunity is rare. After careful consideration, Jack does not think that the Unsullied have the potential to become an elite navy. So he simply took advantage of the power chaos in Astapa and the battle between the slave owners of the world and Deneris, and he directly sent troops to take Astapa. By the way, he will test the attitude of the slave owners. If the slave owners still attack Astapa, after he said he would not overthrow slavery, he would defend the city. When the slave owners and Deneris were fighting fiercely, he would launch a surprise attack. If the slave owners said they would not care about them, Jack would use Astapa as a base to establish the first overseas colony. Then when the slave owners and Deneris were fighting fiercely, he would launch a surprise attack. Anyway, Jack was just looking for a reason to attack. He knew very well who was a reliable ally and who could bring him benefits. If the slave owners defeated Deneris, there was no need to think about it. Jack would definitely be the next one. Whether it was to kill the dragon in Jack's hand, or for the technology owned by Atlantis, they would find an excuse to attack Jack and Atlantis. Unless Atlantis stopped trading with others and hid directly in the Seychelles. Otherwise, Jack's identity would be impossible to hide for a long time. After the independence of these free trade city-states, they were rooted in Essos for hundreds of years, but the fear of the Dragon King was still imprinted in their bones. If there were no dragons, they would not think that Deneris had the ability to threaten the entire slavery in Essos. Naturally, they would not rush to form a joint army to attack Deneris. So on the surface, they were just trying to maintain slavery, but in fact, they were afraid that Deneris' dragons would grow up and conquer them again. If Dana's dragons grew up in 20 years and even gave birth to dragon cubs, who could guarantee that there would not be another Valyria after hundreds of years? So rather than saying that they wanted to destroy an external order breaker, it would be better to say that they wanted to destroy dragons. When Deneris shouted the slogan of liberating slaves, young Cai still sent envoys. It said that, as long as Deneris returned to Westeros, they would not pursue the matter of Astapa. They were even willing to give Dany a large number of ships. Why? It was because they expected Deneris to rule Westeros honestly like her ancestors. As a result, things went as she wished. Dany not only wanted to stay in Essos, but also to destroy the slavery system in Essos. It's like two parties fighting, and the party with more people wants to keep things quiet, but the other party directly takes out 3 cannons and points them at them. So the slave owners have to fight, and not only do they have to fight, but they also have to shoot all of Daenerys' dragons. In this case, another young force with 1 cannon also has many technologies that can earn huge wealth. Jack knows what choice these greedy slave owners will make with his ass. So instead of being bullied and then fighting back, it is better to put the shit pot on the other party's head and beat them up first. 3 days later, Pier 1 of Seeking Island. The huge Poseidon sailed back to the sea, accompanied by hundreds of merchant ships carrying some food and 5,000 Unsullied. All the ships that returned to Atlantis in the past 3 days have stopped going out to sea again. After Jack took the lead in setting off with the Unsullied, 30 small boats disguised themselves, replaced the pirates' classic skull flag and sailed away. Soon a group of well-equipped pirates will wreak havoc on the summer sea. This time, Jack specifically asked Poseidon to pull the Poseidon forward to ensure the speed of the entire fleet. At the same time, Jack only brought 5,000 Unsullied and did not bring any bureaucrats. Colonies have always been a very vague concept. Population migration, agricultural reclamation, alien rule, commercial control, and industrial advantages. These can all be conditions for determining colonies. This time, Jack's purpose in taking Astapa is mainly to try agricultural reclamation and alien rule. Jack will control Astapa as an Atlantean, and then ask the Astapa people to grow food for themselves, and at the same time, learn how to conduct commercial colonization. Jack ordered to speed up the sailing speed, because he didn't know how long young Cai could resist Dany. What if Dany took young Cai directly, and then directly took down Astapa? Wouldn't it be a wasted trip? Or Jack had to take Astapa from Dany, which was not impossible. But what if Daenerys suddenly gave Astapa to Jack? It would be difficult to repay the favor. This time, Vittoria did not follow Jack. She had to recruit the seagull spies on the Seeking Island. The group of people that Jack secretly bribed at that time will be transformed from being in the opposition to being formal employees with status and organization. After returning, I have to find a chance to meet Varys and learn some experience from him in managing an intelligence organization. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96. Do you need a rest? If time flies, more than a month has passed in the blink of an eye. The Sea King is like a palace on the sea, huge and luxurious. Now Jack is driving the Sea King out to sea, with only more than 100 people on board. In addition to the sailors and maids, the defense force is only 9 royal guards. Of course, Jack can be counted as one. On the deck, Jack was playing with the trident made of Valyrian steel, while teaching Ellie and Yeager Chinese. BB, ilk. Yeager clumsily imitated Jack's words. Ellie saw the smile in Jack's eyes and asked, "Your Majesty, what does this sentence mean?" Jack smiled evilly and explained the meaning of this sentence, and Yeager's face turned red after hearing it. Ellie threw a coquettish eye to Jack and said it again to Jack. Yeager is introverted and always likes Jack to be gentle, while Ellie is wild and likes Jack to treat her roughly in various ways. "Your Majesty, why do we have to learn this Chinese?" Yeager asked with some surprise. Jack thought for a moment, sorted out the language and said, "Because we need a unique language. Civilization needs to have its own language and culture. Chinese is the language invented by the ancient Atlantis Empire, which is noble and mysterious. In the world of Game of Thrones, different races have different languages, and having one's own language is one of the powerful weapons to digest the colony. There are many dialects in Westeros, but only 2 originated here: the ancient language used by the ancestors before the invasion of the Andals, and the common language afterwards, the only language of the 7 kingdoms. Even though there are many variants of the common language, the people of Dawn in the southernmost part can communicate with the people of the north without obstacles. In addition, the Roina may have brought their own language, but then died out. Foreign languages are either learned in the Citadel, or brought into Westeros by immigrants, merchants, mercenaries, etc. There are many languages in Essos across the strait. The most important is the High Valyrian language used in the old Valyrian freehold, and now its remaining part is just a part of its ruins. Dothraki, the language of the Dothraki, the native people of the Dothraki Sea. High Valyrian, the language of the Valyrian dynasty before the Doom. Low Valyrian, as the name implies, the Valyrian dialect is the dialect of the 9 free cities and slave cities. Each city has its own dialect system, and each dialect seems to have its own vocabulary. Tyrosh. Little is known about the Valyrian dialect used in Tyrosh, except for its strange pronunciation. Giscari. The language of Giscari has been forgotten, replaced by a dialect of High Valyrian. Karth. The language of Ashay. The language of Ashay is like a spell, blending into their spells. Similar to Valyrian. Lazarene. Said to be similar to singing. Trade language, a language developed by seafarers, combining a dozen existing languages from around the world, with a lot of swear words, and including hand gestures. This shows a diversity of the world's languages, especially the language of Valyria, which is even divided into High Valyrian and Low Valyrian. Until now, half of the world's population still speaks Low Valyrian. So Jack plans to teach the Valyrians Chinese in 1 to 2 generations. As for why he uses Chinese, the reason is very simple. Jack does not have the ability to create a new language, and there is no Chinese in the world of Ice and Fire, so just use it directly, which is convenient and saves trouble. At that time, the schools in Atlantis will set Valyrian and Westeros Common Language as 2 professional courses. Hey, won't 2 more professions be born in the future? It also creates a good employment environment for future college students in Atlantis. Ellie showed a puzzled expression. As a bed slave, if Jack hadn't taught her to read and write, she wouldn't even know the words. Jack doesn't even have to expect her to understand the importance of cultural erosion. But this did not prevent Ellie from trying to please Jack. Ellie patted her chest and promised, "Don't worry, Your Majesty. I will definitely study hard and teach the residents on the island." Jack smiled and patted her chest. The residents on the island don't need to learn. What you need to do is teach their children Chinese. The citizens on the island have basically spoken Low Valyrian for about 20 years. It is unrealistic to ask them to change a language. So Jack can only start with their children. First teach Chinese as a foreign language, and then slowly replace the Low Valyrian language, which will last for 1 or 2 generations. This is not a troublesome thing, because the most difficult part, creating a language and fonts, has been completed, which is the Chinese in Jack's mind. Your Majesty, we will arrive at the Astapa dock soon. Jack came to Jack to report. Huh? So soon? Jack was a little surprised. It's not too early, Your Majesty. Our speed is very fast, and the Unsullied have landed at the dock of Astapa. The Unsullied first boarded the dock of Astapa by boat, and they needed to control the dock before Jack got off the ship. Soon, the huge Poseidon docked at the dock of Astapa, and Jack stepped off the Poseidon under the gaze of 5,000 Unsullied. The Valyrian freehold destroyed the ancient Gis Empire, and Astapa was a surviving Gis colony. It was once conquered by the Valyrians, and built into a center of slave trade. The Giscali language has been basically forgotten by the people here. Before leading the army to Yunque, Danny left a council of 3 people for Astapa, a doctor, a scholar and a priest. Later, the council was abolished by the Butcher King Cleon. After gaining the power of the council, Cleon executed the 3 people, and then captured all the children of the nobles, to start training new Unsullied. Every pyramid in Astapa has become a military camp, and the streets are full of lies about death. There is little food in the shops, but all kinds of slaves. At this time, Astapa had closed the gates long ago. Since Meereen launched the war, Astapa has closed the gates, and only the fleet controlled by Cleon can go out every day. Jack came to the dock and shouted, "Everyone, you are here again. Perhaps this place was once your nightmare, but today, you will crush the nightmare with your own hands under the witness of the Sea King and the Sea God." As soon as Jack finished speaking, he suddenly hit the ground heavily with the trident in his hand. Then a dull roar came from the sea and the sky, and a red dragon with a wingspan of more than 3 meters fell from the sky and then crawled at Jack's feet. Then a blue beam of light shattered the wooden bridge of the dock, and Godzilla came ashore from the deep sea and stood beside Jack in the eyes of awe. "Soldiers, do you need to rest?" The Unsullied did not answer, but just knocked the ground with a spear under the leadership of Kato. Chapter 97 God of Ocean and Thunder. Just 10 minutes ago, the soldiers guarding the city of Astapa discovered the huge fleet of Atlantis. So they immediately notified the current ruler of Astapa, the Butcher King Cleon. Cleon was naturally smart enough to overthrow the Council of 3. After receiving the news, he immediately organized 5,000 slaves to come to the city wall to prepare for any possible emergency. When Cleon arrived on the wall of Astapa, 5,000 Unsullied had appeared at the dock in the distance. The appearance of 5,000 Unsullied almost scared Cleon to death. He thought it was Daenerys who was attacking, and he was ready to defend the city to the death. But then he saw the Atlantis Poseidon flag, and immediately realized that this was not Daenerys' army. Although he had never seen the Poseidon flag, he guessed the other party's identity, the father of dragons, Jack Poseidon. Because apart from Daenerys, only the father of dragons has so many Unsullied in his hands. Shit, the father of dragons really betrayed Daenerys and became independent. Cleon cursed angrily. Since Jack left Meereen for 2 months, rumors about the dragon father and dragon mother turning against each other spread throughout the Slavers Bay. People speculated what happened, but it is undeniable that the dragon father did not come back. Cleon did not expect that the dragon father would lead his troops to the gate of Astapa as soon as he came back. However, when Cleon saw that it was the dragon father, he felt relieved. After all, the dragon father only brought a few thousand people and had not seen the siege equipment. But soon Cleon was horrified to find that the dragon father said something in the crowd and directly summoned a red and strange dragon. The most terrifying thing was an unknown monster that came ashore from the deep sea. The monster was estimated to be at least 7 meters tall and dragged a long tail. Cleon suddenly felt a fear of the unknown in his heart, and he immediately yelled at the slave soldiers to prepare supplies for defending the city. But Jack did not intend to have a siege battle with Cleon. He swung the trident of Poseidon in his hand forward and shouted at the gate of Astapa, "Annihilation." Poseidon's dorsal fin flashed a dazzling blue light, which was still clearly visible even in the daytime. Then atomic breath spurted out of Poseidon's mouth, and the terrifying azurite column directly shattered the gate of Astapa, making a deafening sound. Poseidon roared in a terrifying way, but the Unsullied were not afraid, but felt their blood boiling. There was no order from Jack at all, and they rushed towards Astapa with red eyes and roaring. Jack was shocked. He never expected that the Unsullied, who were always shocked, would have such a slightly chaotic charge. But the arrow had to be shot, and Jack shouted again, "Dragon Flame." Karakshu roared in response, swaying and flying towards the wall of Astapa. At this time, the slave soldiers on the wall were already scared silly, and so was Cleon. He never dreamed that Jack would wave his hand and the terrifying deep sea monster would shatter the city gate from such a distance. But soon, Karakshu's dragon roar awakened Cleon. Seeing Karakshu coming to kill him with dragon flames, Cleon immediately turned around and ran away. Damn, I almost forgot that he had a dragon. Demon Targaryen's Karakshu was famous for its ability to spit fire. Jack's Karakshu was of the same species as demons, so it was no problem for him to spit fire. The slave soldiers on the city wall were driven by Karakshu's dragon flames and ran down the city wall wailing. Jack walked into Astapa accompanied by Poseidon and went straight to the largest pyramid in Astapa. That was Cleon's residence, known as the Butcher's Pyramid. Jack walked all the way to the Butcher's Pyramid, and many slaves and free people along the way saw the huge Poseidon. This caused a huge shock to them. No one expected that there would be such a terrifying beast in the world. At this time, Cleon hid in the pyramid with his confidants, ready to fight to the end. The fear of death had swallowed him. Looking at the tallest pyramid in Astapa in front of him, and looking at the Astapa people who were secretly watching from a distance, Jack made a decision in his heart. Annihilation. The blue beam of light appeared again, and hit the Great Pyramid directly. Since you want to hide in the pyramid, you should be buried in it forever. In the end, the Great Pyramid, which had stood for hundreds of years, only lasted a few minutes in front of Poseidon's atomic breath. At this time, Poseidon had already begun to have the invincibility of the Titan beast, and even the atomic breath could be released continuously for several minutes. Looking at the collapsed pyramid, Jack was filled with emotion. According to the introduction of the system, Poseidon only needs 20 years to become an adult. At that time, he would not even need atomic breath, and he could directly use his body to smash all the buildings in the world of ice and fire. Looking at the collapsed pyramid, Jack asked Poseidon to return to the sea first. Then he ordered, "Cato, take people to sweep Astapa and kill all of Cleon's confidants." There were almost no casualties in the destruction of the city this time. Poseidon's role was not only to break the city gate, but also to deter people's hearts. Under the leadership of Cato, the Unsullied quickly took control of the entire Astapa and killed a large number of noble forces promoted by Cleon. In the end, only a small number of nobles remained in the entire city, and the rest were all civilians and slaves. Most of the good masters of Astapa fled to Yunque, and those who stayed in Astapa were basically all dealt with by Cleon, and their children were castrated and trained to be unsullied. Jack didn't even see Cleon's face, and he was buried alive under the ruins of the pyramid. Jack re-supported an Astapa provisional government consisting of 5 maesters and butlers. At Jack's request, they issued a decree to abolish slavery again, and everyone returned to the status of freemen. At the call of the provisional government, the freemen began to build the city gates and built railings around the ruins of the Great Pyramid. Jack wanted to use the ruins of the pyramid to remind the Astapa provisional government and everyone, don't forget how this pyramid became a ruin. A week later, Jack plundered Cleon's wealth, which was less than 200,000 gold dragons, and he was poor as hell. Jack didn't even let go of the ruins of the Great Pyramid. Jack handed the 200,000 gold dragons to the caravan and asked them to return to the Seeking Island with the money. With the departure of the caravan, the dock of Astapa became deserted again. During this week, the power structure of Astapa was completely disrupted, and the interim government began to take power with the support of Atlantis. No one knew where the city-state of Atlantis came from, but they knew that the king of Atlantis, the legendary father of dragons, could communicate with the god of the sea. In the eyes of the Astapa people, Godzilla, the god of the sea, was more suitable to be called the god of the sea and thunder. So Godzilla was given the title of the god of the sea and thunder. At the same time, Karakshu was also called the god of the sky and fire by some people. Chapter 98, Colonial Attempts. Jack also sent Poseidon and 2000 Unsullied to clean up the slave estates around Astapa. No city can be self-sufficient. Astapa and Yunkai are different from Myrene. There are a large number of slave estates around them. Danny did not liberate these estates at the beginning. After Cleon took office, he did not touch these slave estates due to his weak military strength. These slave estates are essentially no different from the noble castles in Westeros. Poseidon and 2000 Unsullied quickly cleaned up the estates. The slave owners who were willing to surrender were made barons by Jack, and the slaves and the estates became free people, and the barons continued to govern their estates. But the barons need to hire free people to farm, and free people have the same rights as the people of Astapa. The estates have to hand in 1/10 of their output as taxes every month. Every 6 months, according to the tax situation, the outstanding ones will be promoted and rewarded for the estates that were vacated because of this cleanup. This time, Jack indirectly obtained nearly 5 million acres of good farmland. Many of these lands were wastelands, and most slaves had poor farming skills, basically burying seeds in the soil and then relying on the weather for food. Jack was limited by the number of grassroots talents, so he could only use this colonial method to control Astapa. At the same time, in order to appease the manor owners who were recruited, Jack formed the House of Representatives and the House of Lords. The House of Lords was mainly responsible for governing Astapa, while the House of Representatives was mainly responsible for the land around Astapa. The House of Lords and the House of Lords jointly formed the Provisional Government of Astapa. At the same time, Jack summoned all the people in the House of Representatives, a total of more than 50 people, and all boarded the Poseidon. Jack did not choose a pyramid to live in the city of Astapa, and he felt more comfortable on the Poseidon. On the deck, Jack met all the people in the House of Representatives, including 5 senators from the House of Lords and 49 manor owners from the House of Representatives. All 44 people looked at Jack, Poseidon and Karakshu beside him with fear. This fear did not come from Jack and Karakshu, but from Poseidon. They would never forget the scene of a giant beast as tall as a house breaking through the gate of the manor. In contrast, they would rather face the spears of the Unsullied than the roar of Poseidon. Everyone, I think you should be clear about the current situation. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jack Poseidon, the Sea King of Atlantis. You can also call me the Father of Dragons. From today on, the Astapa Provisional Government will become a formal government. There is an old saying in Atlantis that a man who knows the times is a hero. I believe that with the support of Atlantis, you will definitely be able to build a beautiful city-state. You'd better not have any crooked thoughts. The sea god is getting stronger day by day. If you betray him, the end will be a bit ugly. After Jack finished speaking, a blue beam of light suddenly appeared next to the Sea King and rushed straight into the sky. Everyone showed fear on their faces, and Sanasis, one of the great counselors, immediately stepped forward. Please rest assured, Lord Poseidon. We will tear down all the bronze statues of the Harpy, and then make bronze statues of the god of ocean and thunder appear everywhere in Astapa. Thanasis was born as a high-level slave. He was very good at scheming. At this time, he already knew Jack's purpose. It was nothing more than turning Astapa into a colony of Atlantis. This gave him an opportunity. Since Astapa was a colony, it meant that Jack could no longer stay here. As long as he seized the opportunity, he would have the chance to become the king of Astapa. When Jack left, he would be the king of Astapa. Jack smiled at Thanasis, who was flattering. He had just found 5 stewards and maesters at random, but he didn't expect that there would be such a flattering person among them. Your name is Sanasis, right? Lord Poseidon, I'm honored that you still remember my name. Jack waved his hand. Your idea is good. From now on, you are the mayor of Astapa, in charge of the House of Lords and the House of Representatives. Sanasis was ecstatic in his heart, but he bowed with a respectful and grateful expression. Jack looked at Sanasis with satisfaction. Before Atlantis could cultivate sufficiently loyal and outstanding grassroots managers, this kind of flattering person was the perfect object of support. At the same time, Jack ordered SYNOPSIS to recruit 15,000 free people who would become the military force of Astapa. However, they would be trained by unsullied officers, and the grassroots officers would also be unsullied. Jack wanted to control the military force of Astapa, and there was no room for negotiation on this matter. There were a total of 400,000 people in Astapa, more than half of whom were slaves, and there were 800,000 people in the surrounding area, 99% of whom were also slaves, and even these slaves had never been liberated. Now Jack has given them the status of freemen, and they will be paid if they work for the manor owner in the future. Jack also requires that their salary cannot be lower than the average labor salary of Astapa. In this way, Astapa's overall income will increase, and it will be able to consume more Atlantis goods. Anyway, it is the manor owner's money that is spent. At the same time, Jack will sell the 3.6 million acres of vacant land with a clear price. Good land costs 3 gold dragons per acre, ordinary land costs 1 gold dragon per acre, and inferior land costs 1 gold dragon 10 acres. The eyes of all the nobles present are bright. This price is a bit expensive, but it is acceptable. The main reason is that the land in Astapa was not in demand before. Many manor owners would rather let the land go to waste than choose to sell the land in their hands. Now the opportunity is in front of them, and they will definitely not let it go. With the land, they will make back the money sooner or later. After Jack finished the statistics, he sold another 100,000 gold dragons of good land. This group of nobles only buy good land, and they don't like medium and inferior land. However, their dislike does not mean that the new freemen of Astapa will also dislike it, especially the cheap inferior land, which is as much as 2.2 million acres. In the eyes of the new freedmen, this is the land prepared for them. As long as they work for the slave owners for a few years, they can save money to buy 2 or 3 acres of land and live a life of being the master of their own house. However, Jack is not going to let them save money to buy land. Soon the Imperial Bank will set up a branch in Astapa, and they will be given low interest loans at that time. After the nobles left with satisfaction, Jack called Cato. "You will be stationed in Astapa for a long time. I will let Newgate arrange a few politicians to be with you. With their assistance, I believe you can control Astapa well. Don't worry, Your Majesty, I will definitely complete the task you have assigned," Cato said confidently. Since the first batch of high-level slaves arrived at the Seeking Island, Newgate has arranged 4 people to teach the commander class of the Unsullied to read and write. As the highest commander, Cato is naturally the one who studies the hardest. Now reading and writing is not a problem. He even took the initiative to find some books to read. He felt that books could teach him a lot of things, not just reading and writing. It was also because of this that he was able to rise from a small captain of the Unsullied to the commander-in-chief of the Unsullied Legion in Atlantis, where the capable prevail. Chapter 99 IQ Tax. Half a month later. The news that Astapa was occupied by a force called Atlantis was known to everyone in Slavers Bay. At the same time, Atlantis announced the establishment of a transit chamber of commerce in Astapa to sell Poseidon's brew. Only then did the merchants in Slavers Bay know why they felt the name Atlantis was familiar. Isn't this the city-state behind the giant wave merchants? The giant wave merchants have recently become famous for Poseidon's brew. According to the news broadcast by Asta, it means that unlimited quantities of Poseidon's brew can be bought in Astapa in the future. In addition, soap, glass and various handicrafts will also be sold. As soon as the news was released, the deserted Astapa dock instantly became lively. Poseidon's brew equals profit. This is the consensus of the merchants, because I don't know when the unique logo of Poseidon's brew has become synonymous with luxury. The nobles and merchants in the central and western parts of SS are proud of being able to taste the various types of fine wines of Poseidon's brew. The free trade city-states in the east don't know much about Poseidon's brew, but they have also heard of the name of Poseidon's brew. And according to the news released by Atlantis, there is not only the standard version of Poseidon brew for 398 gold dragons, but also the customized exclusive version for 648 gold dragons. In addition, there is also the enjoyment version for 128 gold dragons, the ordinary version for 98 gold dragons, and the trial version for 6 gold dragons. After linking Poseidon Brew with luxury goods, Jack decisively adopted some luxury sales models and formulated various versions. Many merchants who originally docked in Yunque heard the news and came to Astapa. But soon they found that only the trial version of 6 gold dragons per bottle could be booked in batches. Because the 98 gold dragons and 128 gold dragons are only sold to nobles, and the 398 gold dragons and 648 gold dragons are only sold to royal relatives. Although they were very dissatisfied with this, they did not dare to act rashly in the face of the unsullied soldiers stationed around the giant wave pyramid. However, although other versions cannot be booked, the trial version of 6 gold dragons is still in great demand. In one morning, 500 copies of the trial version of 6 gold dragons were booked. The trial version of Poseidon Brew is made of scraps, and the cost is almost zero. That is to say, Jack earned 5,000 gold dragons in the morning. It can be seen how high the profit will be when an item is promoted as a luxury item. People will no longer consider the value of the commodity itself, but start to think about how much face and vanity the commodity will bring to him. The giant wave pyramid, the second largest pyramid in Astapa, was occupied by the giant wave chamber of commerce and transformed into a chamber of commerce station. The first pyramid was occupied by Cato and transformed into the Atlantis Empire Embassy. The third pyramid is the administrative office of the puppet regime of Astapa. In the Poseidon at the dock, Marty is having a meal with Jack. Even on the ship, the food is still rich because of the convenience of supplies. Marty came from Myrene. Because a branch of the Chamber of Commerce was to be established, Marty could bring a group of backbones from Myrene to Astapa. With this group of backbone members, a branch of the Chamber of Commerce can be built by recruiting a group of employees in Astapa. Your Majesty, why don't you just wholesale the 300 gold dragons of Poseidon Brew in large quantities like before? Marty was a little confused. The 6 gold dragons of Poseidon Brew sold a lot, but if the 300 gold dragons of Poseidon Brew were sold in large quantities, wouldn't it be faster to make money? Because the nobles of SS are too rich, I didn't expect them to be so willing to spend money for their vanity. The nobles compared slaves, land, wives, gold, gems, and everything they could. Now, of course, they wouldn't mind comparing their taste for fine wine. Don't worry, just do as I say. Models 98 and 128 will only be sold to nobles, and models 398 and 648 will only be sold to rulers. Maybe we don't make money now, but when our Chamber of Commerce branches are opened all over the world, the time to make money will just begin. I understand, Your Majesty. I will arrange for people to buy a piece of land in Yunque and establish a branch when I go back, and we will start with Yunque. You don't have to buy the land yourself, just go and talk to the great sages of Yunque and ask them to provide land, otherwise we will not sell Poseidon's Brew and other products in Yunque. Marty was stunned, then asked, will this make them unite to boycott our products? In Marty's opinion, this was really too much. Not only were they going to harvest them, but they were also asked to provide land. No, they have no shortage of places to build branches of the Chamber of Commerce. As long as they dare to boycott our products, we will say that they have stolen our technology and sent troops to attack them. Jack smiled and patted Marty on the shoulder. Although our navy is very weak now, with Poseidon here, we can still deal with a weak free trade city-state alone. Marty was a little stunned after hearing Jack's words. Isn't this a gangster? He just puts a hat on others and then directly sends troops to attack them. But then Marty was relieved. More than half a month ago, Astapa was beaten without any reason. Jack suddenly appeared in Slaver Bay and turned Astapa into his colony. Jack is not worried about others joining forces to boycott his products. Although Atlantis does not have enough talents to occupy and control other trade city-states for the time being, it can still break through and plunder. The most difficult siege battle is nothing in front of Godzilla. The Unsullied can easily enter the city. Marty, you will be the district president of Slavers Bay from now on. When you come back, I will ask Rudger to arrange 2 more ministers to assist you in your work. Marty's eyes flickered slightly, and then he suggested, Your Majesty, although Dono is a little stupid, he works very hard and is very familiar with the job. I think he can serve as the branch president of Myrene. Jack immediately understood Marty's idea. He wanted to help his brother get promoted. The 3 city-states in Slavers Bay must have 3 branch presidents. As a district minister, he naturally hoped that the 3 branch presidents would be his own people. Okay, I'll arrange 2 people to come over. As the district president, you will be in charge of the entire Slave Bay branch. I've seen Dono's attitude, so let him be the president of the Marine branch. In addition, take out 20% of the profits from the Poseidon brew, sold in Slave Bay to promote the Poseidon brew. Your Majesty, the Poseidon brew is now famous. I think this 20% of the profits can be saved to expand the factory. No matter how famous it is, it must be promoted. In the future Poseidon brew will take out 20% of the profits for promotion. Luxury goods are IQ taxes. How can anyone buy them without promotion? I understand, Your Majesty. I will arrange this matter. Seeing that Jack had made up his mind, Marty said no more. He just gave Jack a suggestion for reference. Marty never doubted Jack's decision, because Jack's decision making had never been wrong. Chapter 100 Surprise or Shock. At the same time, the news naturally spread to Myrene. Danny was a little confused when she learned that Astapa was occupied by Jack. She couldn't understand why Jack suddenly occupied Astapa. You know, Astapa quickly declined after the Butcher clan came to power. There is no money to be made by occupying Astapa. Even if Jack wants to develop Astapa, he needs to invest money in it. But in fact, Jack has no intention of developing Astapa as his own territory. He just has his eyes on the land and geographical location around Astapa. Not only will he not invest a penny in it, but he will also squeeze the wealth of the remaining nobles in Astapa. Miss Andoe gently stroked Daenerys' smooth belly. This is not Daenerys overeating. Your Majesty, should I tell Jack about this? Miss Andoe asked. Danny snorted coldly. Of course I have to tell him. I pulled up my pants and ran away. Do I have to pay for the child support myself? Daenerys was pregnant. The night before Jack left, Jack, who did not bring an umbrella every day, finally let Daenerys get shot. The increasingly powerful unburnt physique allowed Dany to break the witch's curse on her, and naturally she regained the ability to get pregnant. But she didn't tell anyone, including Jack, about this, and she still let Jack attack without armor every day. But you and Jack didn't have a wedding. How to arrange the identity of the child? You can't let your eldest son be a bastard, right? Daenerys signaled Miss Andoe not to worry. The father of this child is the Sea King of Atlantis. As long as the identity is announced, her ministers will spare no effort to support this child. Because this child is the child of the mother of dragons and the father of dragons, he is a natural dragon rider and a descendant of the dragon family with pure blood. Even her ministers will match her with Jack's alliance, using this child as a hub to win the support of Atlantis. Now who in Slavers Bay doesn't know that the father of dragons is the king of Atlantis? They are also aware of the money-making ability of Poseidon's brew. After all, Poseidon's brew was spread from Myrene, a real cash cow. Therefore, Daenerys has never worried about the identity of the child, because the child is destined not to be a bastard. Even if Daenerys does not recognize the child's identity as an heir, she believes that Jack will take the child back. Daenerys even worries that, if she does not give birth to twins, Jack will send someone to snatch the child. Fortunately, after confirmation by doctors and warlocks, Dany should be pregnant with twins, because her belly is much larger than that of a normal woman who is pregnant for 2 or 3 months. This is also the basis for the warlock and doctor to confirm that Daenerys is pregnant with twins. The news of Dany's pregnancy has not spread yet, and only the confidants around her know it. But now Jack has appeared in Astapa, and has taken Astapa, and the opportunity to release the news of Dany's pregnancy has come. Miss Andoe, go arrange for someone to spread the news of my pregnancy. There is no need to hide the father of the child. Tell everyone directly that it is Jack Poseidon, the father of dragons. Then let your brother Miss Andoe take a boat to Astapa, and tell Jack that his woman and child will soon be besieged by slave owners. Before Daenerys was pregnant, her relationship with Jack was that of queen and prime minister, mistress, and lover. But once she had a child, it was different. Dany was no longer Jack's mistress and queen, but Jack's woman and the mother of his child. Because no matter how Jack explained it, others would think so, especially the anti-dragon alliance. If Daenerys Targaryen was not pregnant, they might be inclined to do business with Jack and then win over Jack. Even as long as Jack did not clearly express the overthrow of slavery in Astapor, they would recognize Jack's colonization of Astapor. But with a child, the slave owners would never think so again. They would only think that Jack had joined forces with Daenerys and was a target that must be attacked. And Jack himself is the father of dragons. Wouldn't the child of the father and mother of dragons be a natural dragon rider? If they had a few more children and the dragons laid a few more eggs, wouldn't this be the routine of Valyria's rise in Essos? So as long as this child was announced, no matter how Jack argued, he and his Atlantis would become allies of Daenerys. Dany gently stroked her belly. She was a little hungry. Since the morning sickness some time ago, Dany could clearly feel that the two little guys in her belly were madly absorbing the nutrients in her body. This is also one of the reasons why Dany felt that she was pregnant with twins. She could clearly feel it. And as expected, her appetite began to increase, and she began to eat more frequently, basically needing 5 meals a day. The child in her belly was obviously abnormal, and Annie thought of the rumor that Jack could breathe in water. Maybe Jack, like her, has some different physiques from ordinary people. When she thought of Jack asking her every time if it was a lot, whether it was swollen or not, she wanted to laugh. It was a lot, and it was swollen, but now she was caught, and Jack had no choice, even if he didn't want to help her deal with the slave owner. Because the slave owners will take the initiative to attack Jack because of this child. Originally, they might have been troubled because they couldn't find the lair of Atlantis. But now Jack has taken Astapor by chance, and there are still 5,000 unsullied in it, which directly sends the target to the Anti-Dragon King Alliance. Now the Anti-Dragon King Alliance is really the Anti-Dragon King Alliance, and it has to deal with 2 Dragon Kings at once. And it's too late for Jack to escape now. Atlantis has already established a foothold in Astapor, and has also called Marty to Astapor to build a branch. Dany seemed to have seen Jack's confused face, and laughed out loud. I don't know if you like this surprise, Dany said to herself. The origins of the two destined them to not become queens. If they were ordinary slaves, it would be fine, but the key is that they were born as bed slaves. Although the Atlanteans are all born as slaves, there are also differences between slaves. Jack currently feels that the most suitable people are Vittoria and Daenerys. The former is because he knows his roots and is born as an ordinary slave, and the latter is because of his excellent bloodline. Jack was more inclined to make Vittoria the queen, but no matter who it was, Ellie and Jagger must not get pregnant first. If the eldest son's mother was born a bed slave, maybe there would be no problem when Jack was in power, but once Jack abdicated, it was uncertain what would happen. As for the top nobles in Westeros and Essos, Jack had never considered them. Once he married those nobles, there would be a lot of trouble. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.